Welcome, dear friends, to a quiet journey through the vast, intricate world of the Spider-Verse. This multiverse, where countless versions of Spider-Man reside across time and space, is a tapestry woven with stories of bravery, sacrifice, and wonder. From the familiar struggles of Peter Parker to the fresh, vibrant adventures of Miles Morales and beyond, we'll drift through these tales, finding peace in the many lives that carry the mantle of Spider Man. As we move from one universe to the next, we'll encounter a diverse array of heroes, each with their own unique paths, yet all united by a common thread: their courage to stand, no matter the odds, against the dark forces that threaten their worlds. Tonight, we will unwind through the stories of these extraordinary individuals, letting each moment of their journey settle softly in your mind as you drift closer to rest. Now take a slow, deep breath. Let the quiet settle into your body. Feel the weight of the day slip away, your muscles softening, your mind beginning to quiet. Allow the stories of the Spider-Verse to cradle you in warmth, guiding you gently into the embrace of sleep. And if you enjoy drifting through stories like this, you're welcome to subscribe and softly tell me where you're listening from tonight. Let us begin, dear friends, with the story of the very first Spider-Man and how a simple bite from a spider changed the world forever. There was once a world where the quiet hum of New York City was only occasionally interrupted by the sound of distant traffic, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the soft murmur of people living their ordinary lives. In this world, a young boy named Peter Parker was simply trying to survive, trying to make his way through the maze of high school, family, and the weight of expectations. He was an outsider, an awkward soul, always unsure of his place in the world. But destiny had different plans for him. One afternoon, as Peter wandered through a science exhibition, he unknowingly walked into the path of an event that would change not just his life, but the very fabric of the world. A radioactive spider, its tiny body buzzing with hidden power, bit him. It wasn't an ordinary spider. No, this was a creature of destiny, carrying within its tiny frame the spark of a future hero. As the bite sunk into his skin, Peter felt an unexpected jolt, like an electric shock that reverberated through every nerve in his body. Something inside him shifted. Days passed, and the changes became undeniable. Peter's senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. The once distant sounds of the city now seemed so close, as if the streets were whispering to him. He could feel the vibrations in the air, the subtle movements of everything around him. His strength grew, and his body transformed, adapting to powers he could barely comprehend. With each new ability came the weight of responsibility, an invisible burden that seemed to press down on him from every corner of his new, strange world. It was only when tragedy struck, when his Uncle Ben was taken from him in a moment of senseless violence, that Peter truly understood the gravity of the power now coursing through him. The loss was painful, sharp, a lesson in sorrow that would forever be etched into the core of his being. But in that pain, Peter also discovered a deeper truth, one that would forever define him. With great power, he realized, came great responsibility. This was the first true lesson of the Spider-Man. As Peter embraced this new identity, the world around him began to change. The once mundane streets of New York City became a place filled with new dangers and challenges, but also new hope. Peter, now Spider-Man, would swing across the skyline, moving with grace and precision, his webbing carrying him through the air like a silent guardian. At first, his actions were clumsy, uncertain. He was learning, discovering the full extent of his powers, making mistakes along the way. But with each new villain, each new test, Peter grew stronger, more confident in his role. The first time he put on the mask, he could feel the weight of it, the symbolism of it, as if the very air around him shifted. With every swing through the city, every battle with foes far stronger and more ruthless than he ever imagined, Peter learned more about himself and the true meaning of being a hero. But it wasn't just about fighting crime, it was about hope. It was about standing up in the face of despair and choosing to be the light when everything around you seemed dark. And so, Peter Parker, the boy who once felt small and unseen in the bustling streets of New York, became Spider-Man. With each passing day, he would grow not only as a hero, but as a person, carrying the memory of his lost family, of his uncle's final words, and the quiet hope that perhaps one day the world could be a little better because of him. This was only the beginning. The story of Spider-Man was just starting to unfold, and as Peter continued to swing through the city, he would find himself facing challenges beyond his wildest dreams. Little did he know, he was not the only one who had been touched by the power of the spider. The Spider-Verse was about to reveal itself in ways that no one, not even Peter, could have predicted. As the world of Spider-Man continued to grow and evolve, a quiet ripple began to spread across the very fabric of reality. The story of Peter Parker, though extraordinary, was just one thread in a much larger tapestry. Unbeknownst to Peter, there were other universes, other realities, each with its own version of Spider-Man, each bearing the same name, yet each living out a story all their own. This was the beginning of the Spider-Verse, a sprawling interdimensional web that connected countless worlds, all sharing the same heart. It was a concept that would challenge everything Peter knew about his place in the universe, and yet it would also teach him that the threads that connected them all were far stronger than he could have ever imagined. It all began quietly at first. A ripple, a disturbance in the calm of Peter's world, was felt by those sensitive to the strange forces that existed just beyond the veil of normality. The first sign came not from Earth 616, Peter's home universe, but from another, a universe where things were not as they seemed. A version of Peter Parker, living in a world where the rules of physics and fate were skewed, where time and space didn't quite behave as expected, began to notice something odd. The familiar hum of his world was beginning to crack, splintering at the edges, and through that crack he glimpsed the possibility of other worlds, other realities. Meanwhile, across the vast cosmic expanse of the multiverse, another hero was slowly coming into view. Miles Morales, a young boy living in a universe where Spider-Man was not just an idea, but a myth, an ancient story passed down through generations, was about to have his own life altered forever. It was in his world that the first true intersection of the Spider-Verse would occur, and from that moment on, everything would change. Miles, unlike Peter, had never known what it was like to see a superhero swinging through the skies above him. He had heard stories of the original Spider-Man, but to him, it was all a part of folklore, something distant and unreal. But everything changed one fateful evening. As he was bitten by a genetically modified spider, he felt an odd sensation surge through him. His senses became sharper, his mind clearer, and the world around him began to shift. He was now a part of something larger, something that he couldn't quite understand yet. But he would soon come to learn. The multiverse was not just a concept, it was real, and it was coming for him. At the same time, another version of Spider Man, a more distant one, began to stir. From Earth 65, Gwen Stacy, a girl who once wore the mantle of Spider Woman, found herself drawn into this web of alternate realities. In her universe, she was not the sidekick or the love interest, but the hero, fighting for justice with her own set of struggles. But even Gwen, with her own secrets and her own pain, could not remain untouched by the events unfolding across the multiverse. She too was soon swept into the larger cosmic dance of the Spider-Verse. As more and more of these spider people began to converge, the true scale of the Spider-Verse began to reveal itself. Each version of Spider-Man came from a different world, each with its own history, its own struggles, its own triumphs. Some of these versions of Spider-Man were the same as Peter Parker in almost every way, while others, like Miles and Gwen, were different, not just in their origin stories, but in their experiences. Each brought with them a unique perspective on what it meant to be a hero, to carry the weight of responsibility that came with the power of the spider. The universe began to tremble under the weight of these converging realities. A quiet storm was brewing, one that would pull all of these spider people together in a way they could never have imagined. But they would need to be ready, for in the shadows of the multiverse, a dark force was gathering strength, threatening to destroy the very fabric of reality itself. The villainous Morlun, a being of insatiable hunger who had been lurking in the depths of the multiverse, was beginning to make his move. Morlun's power was unlike anything the spider people had ever encountered. He was a creature of darkness, a force that fed on the very essence of Spider-Man's life force. He was relentless, powerful, and he would stop at nothing to destroy every version of Spider-Man in existence, draining their life energy until they were no more. It was then that the spider people, each from their own corner of the multiverse, came together for the first time. Miles, Gwen, Peter, and others like them found themselves united by the very thing that had once set them apart, their connection to the spider. This was no longer just the story of one boy, one city, or one reality. This was the story of all the spider people scattered across the vast, infinite web of the multiverse, coming together to fight a common enemy. Their bond was unbreakable, their purpose clear: to protect the multiverse, to save their worlds, and to defend the very heart of the Spider-Verse itself. But in the midst of this gathering, questions arose. What did it mean to be a Spider-Man, a Spider-Woman, or a Spider-Person? Was it about power, responsibility, or something deeper? Was it about the choice to stand up when all seemed lost, to fight for something greater than yourself? Each of them would come to understand that the true strength of the Spider-Verse was not in their individual powers, but in the shared strength of their will to protect the ones they loved. As the spider people began to work together, they knew the battle ahead would not be easy. The multiverse was vast, and the stakes were higher than ever. But they were not alone. They had each other, and together they would face whatever challenges the Spider-Verse had in store for them. In a world where the extraordinary was rarely seen, Miles Morales lived an ordinary life, or at least that's what he thought. He was a young teenager, navigating the ups and downs of school, family, and friendships. Raised in a world where Spider Man was just a distant figure, an elusive hero in the city's vast history, Miles never thought he'd have anything to do with the larger world of superheroes. His reality was grounded, his worries typical, grades, his parents' expectations, his friends' pressure to fit in. But fate, as it often does, had a different plan for Miles. The night his life changed, the world was quieter than usual. A seemingly random event, a spider bite, unremarkable at first glance, would alter the course of his life forever. The bite came from a genetically altered spider, a creature born of a secretive experiment that no one knew would be the catalyst for a new chapter in the Spider-Verse. Miles felt the tingling in his skin, the faint pulse of something awakening within him. The change wasn't immediate, but soon the world around him became sharper, clearer. Every sound seemed to echo louder. His senses heightened, and his body began to move with an agility that was both thrilling and terrifying. At first, Miles couldn't understand what was happening to him. His newfound abilities, his strength, his reflexes, his ability to stick to walls felt alien and out of control. And yet, there was something familiar about it, something that pulled him toward a destiny he hadn't asked for but could no longer ignore. He was, quite simply, becoming the next Spider-Man. But unlike Peter Parker, whose journey to becoming Spider-Man was marked by tragedy, Miles's story was different. He had no loss to fuel his desire for justice, no Uncle Ben to guide him with the weight of responsibility. Instead, his journey was quieter, more personal. Miles didn't see himself as a hero. He didn't feel worthy of the mantle, and the weight of his new powers often overwhelmed him. His father, Jefferson Davis, a dedicated police officer, wanted nothing more than for his son to have a normal life, free from the dangers of the streets, free from the shadows of the very world that Spider-Man inhabited. And Miles's mother, Rio Morales, adored him with an intensity that only made his growing powers feel like a burden. She wanted him to be safe, to stay away from trouble. Yet here was Miles, grappling with a new reality, where being a teenager was hard enough, but being Spider-Man, an identity that was so much larger than himself, felt impossible. The struggle within him grew. How could he be a hero when he felt so far from what that meant? How could he carry the mantle of Spider-Man when he didn't know if he was ready, when he wasn't even sure who he was anymore? But as the days passed and his powers began to manifest in full, Miles realized that he wasn't the only one struggling with the weight of the world. He had seen a version of Peter Parker, the original Spider-Man, fighting for justice and trying to balance his own humanity with the responsibility of his powers. Maybe he wasn't alone in this after all. Miles's first steps as Spider-Man were shaky, filled with hesitation and mistakes. The webbing he shot from his wrists wasn't always as reliable as he hoped, and his first attempts at swinging through the city were more about trial and error than finesse. But even in the moments of clumsiness, there was a sense of wonder that came with it. The city, once a place that felt distant and out of reach, now felt like his home, his playground. Miles was learning the ropes, figuring out how to protect those he loved, how to use his powers to help the world around him. Yet with each swing through the city, With every moment of clarity came the inevitable fear of failing. What if he couldn't live up to the legacy of Spider Man? What if he wasn't good enough? But then came the turning point. A tragedy would strike that would forever change Miles's understanding of heroism, of what it meant to stand up for what was right. Peter Parker, the Spider Man who had been the symbol of hope for Miles, was killed in battle, leaving behind a city that was without its protector. Miles, still struggling with his identity, was thrust into a role that felt too heavy for him to bear. His first act as Spider Man wasn't one of strength, but of necessity. He had to take up the mantle, not just because of Peter's death, but because the city needed someone to carry on the fight. Miles was no longer just a teenager struggling with his own fears and doubts. He was now Spider Man, and he had to live up to what that meant. It wasn't easy. Miles's journey was filled with moments of uncertainty, moments where he felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. But through it all, there was something beautiful that emerged from within him, the quiet resilience to keep going, even when it seemed impossible. He found his own voice as Spider Man, separate from Peter's legacy, but shaped by it. He learned that being a hero wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, even when you weren't sure if you could make a difference. As time passed, Miles grew more comfortable in his role. He began to understand the complexities of being Spider Man, how the hero's life could be as lonely as it was rewarding, how the pain of loss could fuel a desire to protect others, and how his own identity was just as important as his powers. He wasn't just Miles Morales, the Spider Man. He was a young man with a family, with dreams, with a purpose that stretched beyond the city and into the future. And as the multiverse began to shift and bend, as more versions of Spider Man were pulled into the chaos of the Spider-Verse, Miles would find himself once again faced with choices that would test his strength, his resolve, and his heart. But one thing was clear. Miles Morales was not just a hero in the making. He was a Spider Man in his own right, standing proudly beside the others in the vast web of the multiverse. In the quiet corners of the Spider-Verse, there exists a version of the world where the name Gwen Stacy carries a weight far different from the one Peter Parker had come to know. In this universe, Gwen wasn't the supportive girlfriend of Spider Man. She wasn't the tragic figure who died too young in the shadow of her lover's greatness. Instead, she was the hero, the one who wore the mask, the one who swung through the streets of a city that was every bit as dangerous as the one Peter Parker protected. It was in this universe that Gwen Stacy first took on the mantle of Spider-Woman. Her story began not in the wake of tragedy, but in the quiet strength of a young girl trying to find her place in a world that often felt too big for her. Gwen was a gifted drummer, a high school student with dreams of music and freedom, but everything changed the day she was bitten by a radioactive spider. Just like Peter, Gwen's life was altered in an instant. Her powers weren't just about strength or agility. They were a new way of seeing the world, a way of feeling it deeply. Every vibration in the air, every sound in the city, every breath that she took. At first, Gwen had no intention of becoming a superhero. She didn't seek out the role. It found her, the same way it had found Peter. She tried to ignore it, tried to live her life as best as she could, but the weight of her new powers could not be denied. They came with a sense of responsibility she wasn't ready for, and yet there was a part of her that knew she couldn't turn away from them. The same drive that had compelled Peter Parker to put on the mask, to stand against the darkness in his world, tugged at Gwen in a way she couldn't escape. But it wasn't just the responsibility that weighed heavily on Gwen, it was the loss. In her world, Peter Parker wasn't the beloved Spider Man, he was the tragic figure. Peter had once been the hero of her universe, the one who showed her what it meant to stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. But in a twist of fate, Peter was gone. His own transformation into Spider Man had cost him his life. The tragedy left Gwen shattered. In the aftermath of his death, she carried the guilt of not being able to save him, just as Peter had carried the weight of his Uncle Ben's death. For Gwen, this loss was the fuel that would propel her forward, but it would also be the emotional scar that she would carry with her, always reminding her of the fine line between heroism and tragedy. In the wake of Peter's death, Gwen found herself alone. She didn't have a mentor or a guiding figure like Peter had had in Uncle Ben. She had no one to help her understand what it meant to be a hero. She had only herself and her newfound powers to rely on. And yet, there was a quiet strength in that. Gwen may have been lost, but she had the resolve to carry on, to fight in her own way, and to protect the people she loved. Even as she struggled with her own grief, she refused to let it consume her. Her choice to become Spider-Woman was not about revenge or justice. It was about protecting the ones who needed it most, about carrying forward the memory of Peter, and about proving that even in the face of loss, there was something worth fighting for. Her days as Spider-Woman weren't easy. Gwen faced many of the same struggles that Peter Parker had, balancing her life as a high school student with her new responsibilities as a hero. She faced the constant pressure of hiding her identity, of trying to protect her family and friends while also fighting criminals, dealing with the aftermath of her actions, and navigating the complexities of a life that never stopped moving. But even in the midst of all the chaos, Gwen found moments of peace, moments where she could escape the weight of her responsibilities and simply exist as herself. When she sat behind her drum kit, lost in the rhythm of music, she could forget for a little while that the world needed saving. But the quiet moments were few, and soon enough, Gwen's world collided with that of the larger Spider-Verse. She encountered versions of Spider-Man from other dimensions, versions that were both similar and wildly different from the world she knew. Some of these heroes were older, wiser, more experienced than she was. Others were still figuring things out, just as she had. Together, they would face threats larger than anything Gwen could have imagined, threats that would test the very fabric of reality itself. The Spider-Verse, it seemed, was a web that stretched far beyond the reaches of her own universe. It was a place of connection, of shared experience, and of unspoken understanding. Through these meetings with the other spider people, Gwen began to understand more about herself and the role she played in the larger narrative of the Spider-Verse. She realized that, just as Peter had done in his own universe, she was part of something greater than herself. She was a thread in the vast web of heroes that spanned countless dimensions. Her story, though born from loss and pain, was one of strength and resilience. She had the power to protect, to inspire, and to stand against the darkness. And she wasn't alone. There were others just like her, scattered across the multiverse, all connected by the same power, the same responsibility, the same heart. The relationships Gwen formed with the other spider people became a lifeline for her. They offered her the understanding she had so desperately needed, the camaraderie of those who knew exactly what she was going through. For the first time, Gwen felt like she wasn't alone. She had found a family in the Spider Verse, one that transcended the boundaries of reality. And with that family, she found a renewed sense of purpose, a belief that perhaps, just perhaps, she could heal from the wounds of the past and carve out a place for herself in this strange, sprawling web of heroes. Through every battle, every encounter, Gwen would remember the lesson that had been passed down to her. With great power comes great responsibility. But it was also about choice. It was about the decision to act, to be something more than what fate had planned for you, to stand tall even when it seemed impossible. And as Spider Woman, Gwen Stacy chose to honor the memory of Peter Parker, to carry on the legacy of the spider, and to protect the world she loved no matter the cost. The multiverse, vast and unknowable, had begun to tremble. A ripple had spread across countless realities, a silent call that would pull together the many threads of the Spider-Verse. What once seemed like individual stories, distant and unconnected, were now part of a larger narrative, one in which the fate of all spider people, across all dimensions, was entwined. The balance of the Spider Verse was threatened by a force darker than any of them had ever encountered. It was an event so far reaching it would change everything forever. The Spider Verse event had begun. It started as a whisper, a strange disruption in the web of realities. At first, it seemed like nothing more than an odd fluctuation, an anomaly in the cosmic fabric that could have easily been overlooked. But as the spider people began to sense the disturbance, it became clear something was wrong. A dark force, one that had been lying in wait for eons, was now stirring, preparing to tear apart the very multiverse they all inhabited. This force was not just an enemy, it was a hunger, a creature of unimaginable power and malice, born from the very depths of the multiverse, who had been hunting the spider people across dimensions. Its name was Morlun. Morlun was not like any villain the spider people had ever faced. He was a predator, a being whose sole purpose was to hunt and feed on the life force of Spider-Man and all those who bore the spider's mark. He was relentless, driven by an ancient, insatiable need to consume. His presence was a shadow over the Spider-Verse, a darkness that was spreading, pulling every spider person into his orbit. His power was unlike anything the spider people had known before. He was not bound by the rules of any one dimension. He was a force that existed outside the linear constraints of time and space, able to travel freely across the multiverse, seeking out every version of Spider-Man to destroy. The first to feel the weight of Morland's hunger was Peter Parker, the Spider-Man of Earth 616. Peter had always been the heart of the Spider-Verse, the one who had started it all, but even he was not prepared for the attack that would come. Morlun, with his terrifying strength and deadly abilities, tore through Peter's reality with a fury that left no room for doubt. The Spider-Verse was under siege. But Peter was not alone. As Morland's shadow spread, other spider people began to converge, drawn together by the strange pull of destiny. Miles Morales, the Spider-Man of Earth 1610, was among the first to answer the call. Gwen Stacy, the Spider Woman of Earth 65, was not far behind, and soon other versions of Spider Man appeared from every corner of the multiverse. Miguel O'Hara, the Spider Man of 2099, Peter B. Parker, the older, more weary Spider Man of Earth 616, Spider Ham, the humorous and light-hearted pig version of Spider Man, and many more. Each of them had their own story, their own struggles, but they shared one thing in common: the mark of the spider and the responsibility that came with it. As they gathered, the spider people quickly realized that they were facing an enemy, unlike any they had encountered. Morland's power was vast, and he was not alone. He had a family, other beings, known as the Inheritors, who shared his hunger and his drive. The Inheritors were an ancient race of predators, each one as deadly as the next. They had hunted the spider people across dimensions for millennia, and now they had set their sights on the entire Spider-Verse. The stakes had never been higher. The very existence of the spider people, of the multiverse itself, was in jeopardy. But the spider people would not go down without a fight. United by their shared purpose, they formed an alliance. They would not allow Morlun and the Inheritors to destroy everything they had fought for. The battle was not just about protecting their own universes, but about preserving the legacy of the spider, a legacy that had been passed down through countless versions of themselves. It was a battle for survival, for family, and for the very heart of the Spider-Verse. The fight against Morlun and the Inheritors took the spider people across dimensions, through worlds that were unfamiliar, strange, and dangerous. Each universe they entered brought new challenges, new threats, and new lessons. But through it all, they held onto a single truth: they were stronger together. They had learned that the true power of the Spider-Verse was not in their individual abilities, but in the bonds they shared. It was their unity, their willingness to stand together, that would be their greatest strength. As the spider people fought back against the Inheritors, they learned more about their enemy. Morlun and his family were not just mindless predators, they were beings of great intelligence, ancient and cunning. They understood the multiverse, and they understood the power of the spider. They knew that to truly defeat the spider people, they had to destroy the very thing that made them unique, their connection to the web of life and destiny that bound them together. But as the battle raged on, the spider people began to realize that they had something the Inheritors did not: hope. It was a quiet, stubborn force that refused to be extinguished, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. And as long as there was hope, as long as the spider people stood together, they knew they could fight. They could protect their worlds, preserve their legacy, and keep the web of the Spider-Verse from unraveling. The Spider-Verse event was not just a fight for survival. It was a reminder of what it meant to be a hero. It was about standing up when all seemed lost, about carrying the responsibility of the spider, even when the weight of that responsibility felt unbearable. And it was about never giving up, no matter how dark the world seemed, no matter how many times they were knocked down. As the event unfolded, the spider people learned that the strength of the Spider-Verse lay not in their individual powers, but in the unity they shared. Together, they could face anything. Together, they could protect the multiverse. In the shadowy depths of the multiverse, there exists a force unlike any other, a being of darkness and hunger, Morlun is the embodiment of a predator, driven by a need that cannot be satisfied, no matter how many worlds he consumes. He is the master of his domain, a creature who has existed since the earliest moments of the multiverse, hunting the spider people across countless realities, a presence as ancient as the very web of life itself. Morlun was not born from any single universe. He is a creature of the multiverse itself, able to slip between dimensions with ease. His existence is rooted in a cosmic hunger, a thirst that can only be quenched by devouring the life force of the spider. The moment the spider bite grants someone the powers of the web, it marks them as prey in Morlun's eyes. No matter where in the multiverse they exist, no matter what form they take, all spider people are one and the same to him, a source of sustenance. The origin of Morlun's hunger is as shrouded in mystery as the creature himself. Some say that he was born of an ancient curse, a twisted force of nature created to balance the multiverse by eliminating the spider people who have the potential to disrupt its harmony. Others believe that he is an elemental force, a primal predator created by the very energy that courses through the web of reality. Regardless of his origin, Morlun has become a fixture in the dark corners of every universe, a lurking menace whose only goal is to hunt down and consume the spider people. Unlike many villains who seek power for the sake of domination or control, Morlun's hunger is not driven by the desire to rule, but by the instinct to feed. He does not care about the politics of the multiverse or the struggles of the heroes who inhabit it. He is a force of nature, unseen, unstoppable, and relentless. His singular focus is the destruction of the spider people, the unraveling of the web that binds them to each other and to the fabric of existence. To understand the true extent of Morlun's power, one must first understand what it means to be a spider. The spider is not merely a symbol of heroism. It is a cosmic thread that connects all those who bear the mark of the spider. Every spider person, from Peter Parker to Miles Morales to Gwen Stacy, shares a piece of this universal truth. They are bound together by a force greater than themselves, a force that allows them to transcend the boundaries of their individual universes and unite as one in the fight against the darkness. It is this connection, this link to the very essence of life and fate, that Morlun seeks to sever. Morlun does not simply kill his prey, he consumes them in a way that is both physical and spiritual. When he kills a spider person, he devours their life force, feeding off the very energy that makes them who they are. To Morlun, each spider is not just a hero or a person, they are a sustenance, a source of power that will keep him alive and strengthen him. The more spider people he consumes, the stronger he becomes, growing ever more powerful with each life he extinguishes. And with every life he takes, he grows closer to his ultimate goal, the complete annihilation of the Spider-Verse. For centuries, Morlun has stalked the spider people, moving from one universe to the next, chasing the web of life wherever it leads. His methods are as brutal as they are effective. He does not rely on armies or armies of followers. He is a lone predator, capable of hunting his prey down with a deadly efficiency that few can comprehend. He is a master of the hunt, tracking each spider person across dimensions and striking when they are most vulnerable. What makes Morlun particularly dangerous is his ability to bypass the usual defenses of the spider people. Unlike other villains, he is not intimidated by their powers or their resilience. The strength of a Spider Man, whether it is Peter Parker's strength, Miles Morales' agility, or Gwen Stacy's ability to manipulate sound, does not faze him. He is impervious to their usual attacks. He can match them blow for blow, and unlike the other villains in their respective universes, he is willing to endure the pain, to keep coming back no matter how many times he is struck. And yet, despite his overwhelming power, there is a deep sadness within Moreland. He is a creature of hunger and darkness, bound by an endless cycle of feeding, never able to truly satisfy his insatiable need. Each time he consumes another spider, it is not a victory, it is merely the continuation of his endless cycle, a curse that has trapped him in his own need for sustenance. He is not a villain in the traditional sense, driven by ambition or hatred. He is something far more tragic, a creature trapped by his own nature, forever seeking to fill a void that can never be filled. In the midst of the Spider-Verse event, Morland's pursuit of the Spider People became more urgent. His thirst for power grew stronger with every passing moment, and as the multiverse continued to bend and fracture, he sensed an opportunity to destroy everything. He knew that if he could defeat the Spider People, if he could sever the connection between them and the web of life, then he would finally be able to satisfy his hunger for good. The Spider-Verse, in his eyes, was an abomination, a cosmic flaw that must be eradicated, its threads broken so that the web could never again reconnect. The Spider People, for their part, understood the magnitude of the threat they faced. They knew that their fight against Morland and the Inheritors was not just a battle for their own survival, it was a fight for the survival of the multiverse itself. If Morland succeeded in his goal, if he destroyed the Spider-Verse, then the entire web of existence would unravel, and the multiverse would fall into chaos. As the battle raged on, the Spider People grew closer, stronger in their unity. Each one, no matter their version or origin, brought something unique to the fight. They understood now that Morland's power was not simply physical, it was emotional, psychological, and spiritual. The true key to defeating him was not just in strength, but in the bonds they shared. Together, they could stand against the darkness, and together they would protect the web of life from the predatory hunger that sought to tear it apart. In the year 2089, the world was a stark contrast to the New York City that Peter Parker once knew. Towering skyscrapers pierced the sky, their glass facades gleaming coldly under the relentless sun. The streets were crowded with people, but there was a sense of detachment, a feeling that the vibrant city had become a machine, a cold, efficient system where humanity was no longer the heart of it. Technology had advanced, but it came at a cost. The air was thick with the hum of drones, and the once lively streets of New York felt more like a maze than a home. In this future, Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, was the last remaining hope. Miguel's story was one of ambition, tragedy, and transformation. A brilliant geneticist working for the powerful Alchemax Corporation, Miguel was driven by the desire to help humanity advance, to correct the mistakes of the past, and build a better future. But the future he envisioned was not the one he found. In an experiment gone horribly wrong, Miguel found himself subject to a genetic alteration that was meant to enhance his DNA, but instead, it bonded his genetic code with that of a spider. The result was an unexpected mutation, one that granted him incredible abilities, but also tied him to a fate he could not escape. At first, Miguel rejected the idea of becoming a hero. He didn't want to bear the burden of responsibility that came with the powers he had gained. Unlike Peter Parker, whose journey was rooted in a sense of moral duty, Miguel's origins were tainted with bitterness and regret. He had been thrust into this new identity, forced to reconcile with a future he never wanted. His life, once dedicated to science and progress, had been forever altered by a single accident. But the world he inhabited was dangerous. Corruption, greed, and violence ran rampant, and it soon became clear that Miguel's abilities were not a curse, but a necessary gift in a society that had lost its way. With the Alchemax Corporation at the center of the chaos, Miguel knew that there was more at stake than just his own survival. The city, and indeed the world, was on the brink of collapse, but there was no easy solution. The corruption was deeply entrenched, and every step Miguel took seemed to lead him deeper into a web of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. He was no longer just a scientist. He had become Spider-Man, an unwilling hero who had to navigate a future where the line between right and wrong was no longer clear. Miguel's struggles were different from Peter Parker's. While Peter's story had been one of personal loss, sacrifice, and growth, Miguel's was defined by a constant battle with his own identity. He was not just fighting the forces of evil in his city, he was fighting the dissonance within himself, the conflict between who he was and who he had become. His powers were not just a blessing, they were a reminder of the mistake he had made. Yet in time, Miguel came to understand that they were also his greatest strength. The transformation into Spider-Man was a journey for Miguel, one that took him through the darkest corners of his world and his soul. At first, he wore the mantle of Spider-Man begrudgingly, reluctant to accept the responsibility that came with it. He did not have the same sense of duty that Peter Parker had, the belief that he had been chosen for a higher purpose. Instead, Miguel was driven by a more personal sense of vengeance. His fight against Alchemax was as much about revenge for the wrongs done to him as it was about saving the city. But over time, as he witnessed the devastation caused by the greed and corruption of the powerful corporations, Miguel realized that his journey was not about revenge. It was about redemption. In a future where technology and humanity were constantly at odds, where the pursuit of power had led to the fall of society, Miguel's role as Spider-Man became something far greater than just a symbol of resistance. He became a beacon of hope for those who had nothing left, a protector for a world that had forgotten what it meant to care for its own. And yet, even as he fought for justice, Miguel struggled with the heavy burden of knowing that he could not change everything. The future was already set in many ways, and no matter how hard he fought, the forces that shaped the world were far beyond his control. But Miguel did not give up. He kept fighting, not just for the future, but for the hope that there was still something worth saving. His determination, his refusal to surrender, became his defining trait. He wasn't just fighting for his own redemption. He was fighting for the chance to create a better world for those who would come after him. As Spider-Man 2099, Miguel was unique in more ways than one. His suit, crafted from advanced technology, was a stark contrast to Peter Parker's simple costume. The sleek, futuristic design symbolized not just his role as a hero, but the world he inhabits, a world where technology had taken over, where every decision seemed to be controlled by the powerful corporations that ran the city. His abilities, enhanced by his genetic mutation, were also more advanced than those of the original Spider Man. His enhanced senses, his agility, and his strength allowed him to fight the forces of evil with a ferocity and precision that Peter never could have imagined. But even with all the advancements, Miguel's struggles remained the same. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him. He couldn't save everyone, couldn't fix everything that was broken. The world he lived in was too vast, too fractured, and yet Miguel refused to stop. He became a hero in a future that seemed devoid of hope. Through the darkness, through the chaos, Miguel O'Hara showed the world that even in the most desperate of circumstances, a hero could rise. Miguel's story was a reminder that heroism could take many forms. It didn't matter where you came from or how you got your powers. What mattered was what you did with them. In a future defined by uncertainty, Spider Man 2099 became a symbol of resistance and resilience, a hero who was not defined by his past, but by his will to fight for a better tomorrow. In the bustling streets of Mumbai, where the vibrant chaos of everyday life meets the quiet reflection of ancient traditions, a new kind of hero was born. This hero, unlike the others who swung through the streets of New York or fought on the neon lit rooftops of future cities, was grounded in a world where spirituality, culture, and the weight of destiny intertwined. Pavitar Prabhakar was not just another teenager with extraordinary abilities. He was a symbol of something deeper, something older, a reflection of the mythic nature of heroism itself. Pavitar's story began in a world much like any other. He was a humble young man living with his Aunt Maya and Uncle Beam in the heart of Mumbai, studying hard and trying to balance the expectations of his family with the pressures of his own desires. Like any young person, Pavitar was caught between the demands of tradition and the longing for something more, something that spoke to his own sense of self. But unlike most, he was destined for something far greater. The life of an ordinary teenager would not be his. One fateful day, while walking through the crowded streets of Mumbai, Pavitar's life was forever altered by the bite of a mystical spider. This spider was not the result of a scientific experiment or a freak accident. No, this spider came from the ancient temples that dotted the outskirts of the city, imbued with the power of the gods themselves. The bite marked Pavitar with a new kind of fate, a spiritual bond that linked him to something older than the multiverse itself. This was not merely the granting of power, it was the initiation of a young man into a larger cosmic order where responsibility was woven into the very fabric of his being. In a world that was both ancient and modern, Pavitar's transformation was not just physical, it was spiritual. The powers that the spider granted him were not just strength or agility, but an inner awareness, a deeper connection to the world around him. He could feel the pulse of the city, the heartbeat of the earth beneath his feet. The very air seemed to hum with life, each breath a reminder of the interconnectedness of all things. And with this gift came an overwhelming responsibility, the duty to protect the city, to defend the innocent, and to uphold the balance between the modern world and the ancient forces that had shaped it. Pavitar's journey as Spider Man was not just about fighting villains, it was about reconciling the many parts of himself, the modern young man who longed for a life of freedom, and the spiritual warrior who had been chosen to protect his people. His adventures were deeply entwined with the culture and mythology of India. Unlike Peter Parker, whose webbing was a result of science and technology, Pavator's webbing was imbued with mystic energies, shimmering like the threads of fate itself. He did not just swing through the city as a hero. He moved as if part of a greater cosmic design, where every action, every step, was guided by the ancient wisdom of the gods. But with this power came the constant tension of his dual life. Pavator was torn between the role of Spider Man and his responsibilities as a nephew, a student, and a friend. His family, unaware of his secret, continued to live in their humble home, unaware of the dangers that their nephew faced. His aunt and uncle had given him a sense of stability and love, but they also represented the weight of expectation that weighed heavily on him. Paviter had to balance the sacred and the mundane, finding peace in the quiet moments with his family while preparing for the battles that lay ahead. Paviter's greatest challenge came not from the supervillains that threatened his city, but from his own heart. His identity as Spider-Man was not something he had chosen, but rather something that had been thrust upon him by fate. As he learned to harness his powers, he began to question whether he was truly ready to carry the mantle of heroism. Unlike the other spider people, Paviter did not have a mentor to guide him. He was alone in this vast web of destiny, forced to navigate the challenges of his new identity with little more than his instinct and the teachings of the ancient texts that his family had passed down to him. His first major confrontation came when a villain known as the Snares of Karma emerged. This adversary was not just a physical threat, but a spiritual one, embodying the very forces of fate that governed Paviter's life. The Snares of Karma sought to unravel the web of destiny, to throw the cosmic balance into chaos. For Paviter, this battle was not just about defeating a foe. It was about understanding his place in the world and the greater cosmic plan that had been set in motion the moment he had been bitten by that mystical spider. In this battle, Paviter was forced to confront his greatest fear, the fear of failure. The snares of karma were not simply trying to destroy the physical world. They were aiming to break the very fabric of destiny itself. And for Paviter, this was a deeply personal struggle. If he failed, it would mean the collapse of the world he had been chosen to protect. The weight of this responsibility nearly crushed him, but in the end, he remembered the teachings of his ancestors, the understanding that balance, while fragile, is always present, even in the darkest moments. In the final moments of the battle, Paviter used his webbing in a way he never had before, drawing on the ancient power of the spider and the lessons he had learned from his family. With a final spiritual push, he was able to defeat the snares of karma, restoring the balance and securing his place as a protector of both the spiritual and physical worlds. Paviter's victory was not without sacrifice. He learned that the life of a hero, especially one who carries the weight of destiny, is never easy. But it is through these trials that he came to understand the true meaning of being Spider-Man. It was not just about fighting villains. It was about understanding the interconnectedness of all things, the balance between the sacred and the profane, between duty and desire. And in this understanding, Paviter Prabhakar embraced his role as Spider-Man India, knowing that the path he walked was not just his own, but one that was part of the great cosmic web that connected all spider people across time and space. In a world where the fog never quite lifts and the shadows stretch long into every corner of the city, there exists a Spider Man who walks a darker path. This world is a place where the streets are drenched in the murky light of street lamps, where the air is thick with cigarette smoke and the hum of distant sirens. It is the 1930s, a time of uncertainty, corruption, and despair. And in this dark and gritty version of New York, there is one man who stands above the rest, a man draped in shadow, his actions as swift and silent as the night itself. This man is Peter Parker, Spider Man Noir. Peter's story began not with a bite from a radioactive spider, but in the haunting atmosphere of a world fraught with crime, danger, and moral ambiguity. His life had been shaped by the harsh realities of the Great Depression. In a time when hope was scarce and the future seemed as gray as the sky above, Peter was just another face in the crowd, struggling to survive. He lived in a world where the line between right and wrong was blurred, and every choice seemed to have a darker consequence. The turning point in Peter's life came when a fateful encounter with a mysterious figure led him down a path that would forever change his fate. One night, while investigating a case for the Daily Bugle, Peter found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was caught in the crossfire of a gang war, a violent and chaotic clash between rival criminal organizations. It was during this bloody confrontation that Peter was bitten by a spider, an ordinary creature with extraordinary consequences. But unlike the stories of other spider people, this spider did not come from a laboratory or a freak accident. No, this spider was a symbol of fate, a creature born from the darkness of the city itself, imbued with an ancient and mystical power. The bite did not grant Peter the same flashy abilities that other Spider-Men had. It did not give him the ability to swing across skyscrapers or shoot webs from his wrists. Instead, the spider imbued him with a sharper sense of perception, a heightened awareness of the dark forces that ran through the veins of the city. Peter's senses became more attuned to the shadows, the subtle movements that others missed. He could see through the lies of the criminals that plagued the city, hear the whispers of the guilty hiding in the corners of alleys and boardrooms alike. In this world, there were no simple answers, no clear-cut heroes. There was only survival and the occasional glimmer of justice in the darkest corners. As Spider-Man Noir, Peter took to the streets not with the hope of redemption, but with a singular purpose: to bring justice to a world that seemed to be beyond saving. He did not wear the iconic red and blue suit of the original Spider-Man. Instead, his costume was dark and practical, blending into the shadows of the city. His mask, though simple, obscured his identity from the criminals he fought. His webbing was not a product of science, but a crude invention fashioned from the tools of his trade, a means of survival in a world where the rules of the game were written by the powerful and the corrupt. But even in a world as dark as this, Peter found that his role as Spider-Man was not simply about fighting criminals. It was about standing against the tide of moral decay that swept through the city. It was about seeking truth in a place where lies were the currency of power. Peter's journey as Spider-Man Noir was not one of light and hope. It was a journey of survival, of holding on to the last shreds of humanity in a world that threatened to swallow it whole. The criminal syndicates that ran New York were not just a nuisance, they were the very fabric of the city, pulling the strings of government, business, and law enforcement. The corruption was deep, and the people in power were not concerned with the fate of the common man. They were concerned only with their own gain. In this world, a hero was not someone who could save everyone. A hero was someone who could stand tall in the face of overwhelming darkness and fight for what little light remained. And that was the role that Peter Parker as Spider-Man Noir embraced. The villains he faced were as grim as the world around him. The Vulture, a ruthless crime boss with a penchant for cruelty. The Chameleon, a master of deception who could change his face as easily as he could his allegiances. These were not the colorful, larger-than-life foes that Peter Parker of Earth 616 was used to. These were men and women shaped by the city's darkness, their motives as twisted as the alleys they ruled. And Peter, with his new abilities, was the one who had to stand against them. Yet even as he fought, Peter struggled with the question of what it meant to be a hero in a world so full of corruption, in a place where morality was relative, where the lines between good and evil were always shifting. Could he still hold on to the ideal of justice? Or was he doomed to become just another part of the machine he was fighting against? Every victory seemed to come at a cost, every decision leading him further down a path that seemed less and less like the hero's journey and more like a descent into the very darkness he fought to contain. Despite the struggles, Peter continued to fight. His role as Spider-Man Noir was not one of glory, but of necessity. He could not afford to stop. In a world where evil had become institutionalized, where crime had become a way of life, Peter's fight was the last flicker of hope, even when the odds were against him, even when it seemed like the darkness was about to consume him. Peter refused to surrender. He was Spider-Man, and he would never stop fighting for the city that had made him who he was. And so, in the murky streets of New York, where the rain falls like a curtain of tears, Spider-Man Noir continues his silent vigil. He swings from rooftop to rooftop, a shadow in the night, fighting against the unseen forces that threaten to tear the city apart. His story is not one of victory or celebration, but of perseverance. For in the darkest corners of the world, where the light of hope seems to flicker out, Spider-Man Noir remains a symbol of defiance, a hero in a world that has forgotten what it means to be one. In a time long past, a time where the age of kings and queens reigned supreme, there existed a world far removed from the technological marvels and advanced societies of the modern Spider-Verse. This world, full of intrigue and mysticism, was the setting for one of the most unique iterations of Spider-Man, a hero whose story is rooted in the grandeur of 1602, a time when the concept of superheroes was merely the stuff of legends, and yet the presence of a hero would emerge nonetheless. Peter Parker of Earth 1602 was not a teenager from Queens, but rather a young nobleman living under the rule of Queen Elizabeth I. His life, shaped by the social structure of the time, was one marked by responsibility, honor, and the heavy weight of expectation. Born into a world where the clash of swords and the struggle for power were commonplace, Peter's existence was anything but ordinary. His family was respected, though not wealthy, and his future seemed to be one of service to the Queen, perhaps in the royal court, assisting with the governance of a kingdom. But fate had a different plan for Peter. It was not a radioactive spider that would choose him, nor a freak accident in a laboratory. No, the change that came to Peter was born of an ancient and mysterious force, a cosmic spider whose origins could be traced back to a distant and far off realm. The spider, much like the one that would bite other Peter Parkers in different realities, came to him by chance, but it was no ordinary creature. It was a mystical being imbued with the power to grant not only physical strength, but spiritual insight. When the spider bit Peter, it triggered a series of events that would change the course of his life. Much like other spider people, Peter soon discovered that he was gifted with extraordinary abilities. His senses were heightened beyond that of any normal human, and he found himself capable of scaling walls and reacting with lightning speed. Yet in a world governed by knights and rulers, Peter's abilities were a source of unease. They were not the kind of power that could easily be hidden or understood. In a time where magic, alchemy, and the supernatural were just beginning to touch the fabric of everyday life, Peter's powers seemed to defy both logic and reason. At first, Peter struggled to understand the full extent of his powers. Unlike the more familiar Peter Parker, who had the guiding wisdom of Uncle Ben's words to ground him, this Peter did not have the same family structure. His uncle had been taken from him long ago, and Peter was left to grapple with his new abilities on his own. His transformation into Spider-Man was not born out of personal tragedy, but rather a growing sense of duty, a responsibility that emerged as the knowledge of his new role became clear. This was no longer just about him. It was about the world around him, the kingdom that depended on the strength of its protectors. As Spider-Man, Peter's role was different from the others in the Spider-Verse. The conflicts he faced were not as simple as stopping petty criminals or facing off against supervillains. In a world where battles were fought with swords and tactics, Peter's enemies were those who represented the deepest form of corruption, nobles and officials whose greed threatened to undermine the very core of the kingdom. One such foe was the powerful sorcerer, Norman Osborn, a member of the court who had his own ambitions for power and who sought to exploit Peter's powers for his own nefarious purposes. In a time where the supernatural held more sway than science, Norman Osborn was an enigmatic figure, both a brilliant strategist and a dark sorcerer. His pursuit of Peter Parker was not simply one of power, but one of possession, for he sought the power that resided within Peter, believing that the young nobleman's strange abilities could give him control over forces that even the Queen's finest alchemists could not fathom. His obsession with Peter would lead him down a dark path, one that would clash with Spider-Man's desire to protect his world from destruction. But beyond the struggles of the court and the clash between good and evil in the world of politics, Peter Parker's journey was a deeply personal one. As Spider-Man 1602, he was a symbol of a new kind of heroism, one not defined by technology, but by an inner resolve and a sense of destiny. In the world of 1602, there was no room for the flashy heroics that would later define the spider people of the future. There was no internet, no media circus surrounding his actions. There was only the quiet understanding of the people he protected and the quiet reverence with which they regarded him. For Peter, being a hero in this time was not about fame or glory. It was about doing what was right in the face of overwhelming opposition. The battles that Peter fought were not just physical, but moral and spiritual. The kingdom was filled with injustice, and the very idea of what it meant to be a hero was shaped by the traditions of a world that had little room for new ideals. Yet through it all, Peter persevered. He found that his abilities, while extraordinary, were not the key to his heroism. Instead, it was his heart, his sense of responsibility, and his ability to rise above the societal constraints of his time that made him the hero he became. As Spider Man, Peter learned that being a hero was not always about fighting with strength or power. It was about choosing to stand up in a world that seemed to be falling apart. He had no mentor to guide him, no wise uncle to offer him sage advice. He had only his own sense of right and wrong, shaped by the teachings of a world long gone and a deep sense of empathy for those around him. He understood that in a world where corruption ran deep, his greatest weapon was his own belief in justice. And so, as Spider Man 1602, Peter Parker became the protector of a kingdom on the edge of change. His webbing, woven with the magic of the cosmos, became the symbol of hope for the oppressed, a beacon of justice in a world where the forces of evil threatened to tear apart everything that was good and pure. He was not just a hero for his time, but a hero for all time, a reminder that even in the most unlikely of places, a hero could rise and change the world. Amidst the many iterations of Spider Man that have spanned across time, space, and the very essence of reality, one of the most unusual and whimsical versions of the hero resides in a world that is not quite like any other. A world where the laws of physics bend to the whims of cartoons, and where anthropomorphic animals share the same battles, hopes, and triumphs as humans. This world is home to Peter Porker, better known as Spider-Ham, a hilarious and charming version of Spider-Man who brings a sense of lightheartedness to the otherwise epic and often serious narrative of the Spider-Verse. Peter Porker's story is one of pure absurdity, born from the comedic imagination of a world where animals walk and talk just like humans. In his original universe, Peter was not a teenager bitten by a radioactive spider. No, Peter was a humble pig living a simple life as a spider, an ordinary arachnid who lived in a laboratory. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. One fateful day, an experiment gone awry transformed Peter into the anthropomorphic creature we now know as Spider-Ham. The experiment was the work of a mad scientist, Dr. Benjamin Parker. Yes, in this world, Uncle, Ben was also a scientist, and it was Dr. Parker's tragic death at the hands of a villainous adversary that set Peter Porker on his path to becoming a hero. Much like the original Peter Parker, the loss of a beloved father figure was the catalyst for Peter Porker's journey into heroism. But unlike other versions of Spider-Man, Spider-Ham's world is one where humor, slapstick comedy, and puns reign supreme. His adventures are not just about defeating villains or saving the world. They are about bringing joy and laughter to a universe that is as chaotic as it is fun. Despite his comedic origins, Spider-Ham's role in the Spider-Verse is no less important than his more serious counterparts. His story introduces an entirely new dimension to the multiverse, one that is characterized by whimsy, lightness, and the occasional pie-in-the-face gag. But even in the face of overwhelming absurdity, Spider-Ham's heroism is deeply rooted in the same values that drive the other spider people: responsibility, courage, and the belief that anyone, no matter how improbable, can make a difference. When Spider Ham first joins the larger Spider Verse event, his presence is a breath of fresh air. His humor and carefree attitude provide much needed levity in the midst of a multiversal battle that is as intense and dire as any the spider people have ever faced. In a world that is teeming with darkness, Spider Ham reminds everyone that even the smallest, most unexpected heroes have something valuable to offer. His presence is a reminder that sometimes heroism comes in the most unlikely of packages, whether it's a pig in a Spider Man suit or an extraordinary scientist who simply wanted to help his fellow creatures. The first encounter between Spider Ham and the other versions of Spider Man is as delightful as it is bizarre. When Peter Parker of Earth 616 meets Spider Ham for the first time, there is a moment of pure confusion. Are you a pig? Peter asks, his eyes wide with disbelief. Indeed, I am, Spider Ham replies, his voice full of charm and mischief. And I've got the webs to prove it. And just like that, Spider Ham is seamlessly integrated into the larger narrative of the Spider Verse, his comedic antics offering a stark contrast to the more serious and intense personalities of his fellow spider people. But despite the absurdity of his origins, Spider Ham is no stranger to the same challenges that the other spider people face. Like Peter Parker, he has his own share of villains to contend with. His arch nemesis, the evil Doctor Doom, is a larger than life villain whose plans for world domination are just as ridiculous as they are dangerous. The whimsical nature of Spider Ham's world doesn't make his enemies any less formidable. If anything, it makes them all the more dangerous because they operate in a world where anything can happen, and often does. In addition to his many battles with villains, Spider Ham also struggles with the same internal conflicts that the other spider people face. He too grapples with the weight of responsibility, the burden of his powers, and the ongoing question of whether he is truly cut out to be a hero. But unlike the others, Spider Ham's perspective is uniquely optimistic. While the other spider people may struggle with self doubt and feelings of inadequacy, Spider Ham tackles every obstacle with a laugh and a quip. His resilience and refusal to take life too seriously are what make him such a vital part of the Spider-Verse. Spider Ham's most important contribution to the Spider-Verse is his reminder that heroism does not always require solemnity or gravitas. While the other spider people carry the weight of the multiverse on their shoulders, Spider Ham teaches them to laugh in the face of adversity. His presence in the Spider-Verse is a reminder that sometimes the best way to face darkness is with humor, lightness, and an unwavering belief that everything will turn out okay in the end. Despite his humorous nature, Spider Ham is not without his moments of reflection. There are times when his optimism falters, and he wonders whether the constant battle for justice is worth the sacrifices it demands. But in those moments, he remembers why he became Spider Ham in the first place. It was to honor the memory of Dr. Parker, to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and to bring a little bit of light into a world that could often feel overwhelmingly dark. And so, Spider Ham continues his journey across the multiverse, swinging from one universe to the next, never losing his sense of humor or his commitment to justice. He may be a pig in a Spider-Man suit, but in the grand tapestry of the Spider-Verse, his contributions are just as important as any other hero's. For Spider Ham, heroism is not just about defeating villains. It's about bringing joy, laughter, and hope to a world that desperately needs it. In a world where the boundaries of technology and human ingenuity constantly blur, there are versions of Spider Man who stand as symbols of the future, where technology no longer simply enhances a hero's capabilities, but becomes an essential extension of their very being. Among these versions of Spider Man is a unique and awe inspiring iteration, one where the powers of the spider are paired with the might of advanced armor, designed not just to protect, but to elevate the very nature of heroism itself. This is the story of Spider Armor, a Spider Man whose battles with evil are fought in a suit that is as much a part of him as the webbing he spins. In Earth 1145, Peter Parker's journey diverged from the familiar path when the weight of the many battles he fought as Spider Man began to take its toll on him. He had faced threats more powerful than he could ever have imagined, foes that demanded more than just strength, agility, and his quick wit. As the challenges grew, Peter realized that to continue protecting the world, he needed something more, something stronger, something that would allow him to push beyond the physical limits of his own body and protect those he loved without compromising his safety. And so, in a world where technology had reached incredible heights, Peter turned to innovation, designing a suit that would redefine what it meant to be Spider Man. The spider armor was a marvel of engineering. The suit was equipped with enhanced strength, advanced durability, and the ability to withstand the most devastating attacks. It was a perfect fusion of Spider Man's signature powers and the cutting edge technology of the future. The armor was not simply a means of defense, it was an extension of Peter's identity. Its design was sleek, metallic, yet still reflected the iconic red and black colors that had come to symbolize Spider Man. The advanced technology gave Peter the ability to engage in combat at a new level, to withstand impacts that would have once been fatal, and to push his limits beyond what any human could hope to achieve. The creation of the spider armor was a pivotal moment for Peter Parker, marking a shift in how he viewed his role as Spider Man. No longer simply the agile, web slinging hero of New York, he had become a symbol of the future of heroism, one where strength and technology were intertwined, where the power of the individual was amplified by the advancements of science and innovation. Yet, even with this powerful suit, Peter still struggled with the same questions that had haunted him for years. Was he doing enough? Could the armor protect him from the overwhelming darkness that seemed to be growing around him? Was the price of victory worth the cost? In the early days of wearing the spider armor, Peter was awestruck by the possibilities it offered. The suit allowed him to take on foes that had once been too powerful for him to defeat, to endure blows that would have crippled him before. It gave him the confidence to face challenges that would have left him trembling in fear. But with each victory came a creeping sense of unease. The suit, while powerful, could not protect him from everything. The challenges that Peter faced as Spider Man were no longer just physical, they were emotional, psychological, and even with the most advanced technology at his disposal, Peter knew that he was still just a man, struggling to reconcile his responsibilities as a hero with his desires as a person. As Peter donned the spider armor for the first time, he was faced with the growing complexity of his role in the multiverse. In the past, Spider Man had been a symbol of hope, a hero who fought for justice, no matter the cost. But now, with the technological advancements of the spider armor, the very nature of heroism was changing. The Spider-Verse had expanded far beyond its humble origins, with heroes from all corners of the multiverse coming together in a battle against enemies that threatened to destroy not just one world, but many. The spider armor, while it granted Peter incredible abilities, also forced him to confront the potential for loss. The very technology that gave him an advantage could in turn make him more vulnerable. The power to withstand attacks came with the price of being seen as a tool, an instrument of war rather than a symbol of hope. The armor, with its sleek design and advanced features, made Peter feel like a walking machine, something less human, less relatable. Could he still be the hero he had once been? Could he still inspire those around him, or would the power of the suit overwhelm his humanity? Peter's doubts grew as he encountered more versions of Spider-Man from different realities. While some embraced the potential of their own technological advancements, others, like Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, and the other Spider people, remained true to the heart of what it meant to be Spider-Man. They were heroes because of their choices, their bravery, and their willingness to fight for others. The technology that powered their abilities was secondary. It was their hearts, their sense of responsibility, that made them the heroes they were. In the face of these challenges, Peter realized that the spider armor was not the answer to all his problems. It was a tool, yes, and a powerful one, but it was not the core of his heroism. The core of what made him Spider-Man was his willingness to sacrifice, his unwavering commitment to protect those who could not protect themselves, and his enduring belief that hope was more important than power. As the Spider-Verse expanded and the various spider people joined together to fight the greatest threats they had ever faced, Peter began to understand that the future of heroism was not in the armor or the technology. It was in the people who wore the mask. The armor may have given him an edge, but it was his heart, his sense of justice, that would ultimately define him as a hero. In the end, the spider armor was not about creating an invincible hero, but about giving Peter Parker the tools he needed to be the hero he always aspired to be. It was a reminder that technology, while powerful, was just a means to an end. The true strength of a hero lies not in their gadgets or suits, but in the choices they make, the sacrifices they are willing to endure, and the love they have for the world they protect. And so, Spider-Man with his armor continues to fight in the future, protecting his world with the understanding that while technology may make him stronger, it is his unwavering spirit that truly makes him the hero the world needs. The armor may protect him from harm, but it is his heart that will always guide him, no matter what the future holds. Among the many tales woven throughout the vast Spider-Verse, there exists a story marked by questions of identity, memory, and the meaning of self. This is the saga of Ben Reilly, the clone of Peter Parker, whose existence was both a reflection of Peter's deepest fears and a symbol of hope and redemption. The Clone Saga, a tale that shook the very foundations of Spider-Man's world, began not with a villain's plot or a grand battle, but with a simple, unsettling truth. Peter Parker was not the only one who could wear the mantle of Spider-Man. Ben Reilly was created as part of an experiment, one that sought to clone Peter Parker in order to understand the essence of his abilities. The process, however, was anything but perfect. The cloning procedure resulted in a being who was identical to Peter in every way: his appearance, his powers, his memories, but who was born without the same emotional ties or the burden of Peter's experiences. Ben was not a mere replica. He was a man in his own right, a separate individual who lived with the knowledge that he was the product of scientific experimentation. The complexity of Ben's existence became apparent from the moment he learned the truth about his origins. For Ben, the discovery of his true nature was a source of profound confusion. Was he a man in his own right, with his own destiny, or was he merely a shadow of the real Peter Parker, doomed to live in his footsteps? The idea of being a clone, of having been created to be a replacement, a copy, gnawed at Ben's soul, leaving him to question his worth. Could he be more than just Peter's clone? Could he live a life that was truly his own? Initially, Ben struggled with these questions, feeling both disconnected from the world around him and consumed by a sense of responsibility that he couldn't shake. The world of Spider-Man, with its endless battles and moral dilemmas, seemed both too familiar and too foreign to him. He could fight the same enemies, swing through the same streets, and wear the same suit, but something was missing. He was not Peter Parker, and yet he was. His identity was a fractured reflection of Peter's life, and every action he took seemed to echo a question that had no easy answer. When Ben first stepped into the role of Spider-Man, he did so out of a sense of duty, but also with a desire to prove something to himself. He sought to demonstrate that he was not merely a copy of Peter, but a hero in his own right. Yet despite his best efforts, Ben could not escape the shadow of the original Spider-Man. Wherever he went, there was always the question: was he simply standing in for Peter, or was he becoming the man he was meant to be? The emotional complexity of Ben's journey was deepened by the fact that he shared a bond with Peter that went beyond genetics. They were more than just two people with the same face and powers. They were two sides of the same coin, each shaped by their experiences and their choices. Ben was a reflection of the parts of Peter that Peter himself struggled to accept, the darker, uncertain parts of his identity. But over time, Ben came to understand that his life, though shaped by Peter's, was his to live. The Clone Saga, which would span many years and lead to a series of dramatic twists, brought Ben face to face with his greatest challenge: the realization that his existence was not just about proving himself to others, but about accepting himself. In his early days as Spider-Man, Ben sought validation from others. He wanted to show the world that he was not a mere shadow of Peter Parker, but an individual with his own worth. However, it was not until he faced his own mortality and the consequences of his actions that Ben truly began to understand the deeper meaning of heroism. Through his journey, Ben was forced to confront the very question of what it meant to be Spider-Man. Was it the powers that defined him, or the choices he made with those powers? Was he just another version of Peter, or was he something more? The Clone Saga explored these questions in a way that was both tragic and hopeful, as Ben sought to carve out a place for himself in a world that had never truly accepted him as anything other than a copy. Despite the challenges Ben faced in his search for identity, he remained a hero at heart. His actions were driven not by the desire for recognition or fame, but by the same core values that had guided Peter Parker for years. The responsibility that came with the powers of Spider Man weighed heavily on Ben, but he never shied away from it. In fact, it was through his struggles and his doubts that Ben ultimately became a stronger, more compassionate hero. Over time, Ben's journey as Spider Man became one of self discovery and redemption. He learned that his worth was not defined by his origins, but by his actions. He could never change the fact that he was a clone, but he could change the way he lived his life. Ben learned that heroism was not about being perfect or having the right lineage. It was about making the right choices in the face of adversity. He came to understand that being Spider Man was about more than just fighting villains. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. Unfortunately, Ben's story did not have a simple or happy ending. His life was marked by tragedy and loss, culminating in his ultimate sacrifice. In the end, Ben chose to lay down his life for others, ensuring that Peter Parker could continue his journey as Spider Man without the burden of his clone's existence. Ben's death was a poignant moment in the Spider-Verse, a reminder of the price of heroism and the complexity of identity. Even in death, however, Ben's legacy lived on. He had proven that he was not just a copy of Peter Parker, but a hero in his own right, worthy of respect and admiration. His journey had taught him, and the world's, that identity is not determined by the circumstances of one's birth, but by the choices one makes and the strength of one's heart. In the end, Ben Riley may have been Peter Parker's clone, but he was also something more, a hero in his own right, whose legacy would endure across the Spider-Verse. Throughout the Spider-Verse, no hero's journey is complete without the presence of villains, forces that not only challenge the hero, but also shape the very essence of their existence. For Spider Man, these adversaries are as much a part of him as the webbing he spins, each one playing a vital role in his growth, understanding, and evolution. Unlike many other superheroes who face singularly evil enemies, Spider Man's rogues gallery is a complex tapestry of characters, each defined by their own motivations, complexities, and often tragic backstories. These villains, while villains in the traditional sense, are never one dimensional. They are reflections of Peter Parker's own fears, mistakes, and even his greatest desires. At the heart of Spider Man's struggle with his villains is the concept of duality. Each villain represents a part of Peter's life that he is forced to confront, often in ways that force him to question not just his actions, but his identity as Spider Man. Peter's villains do not just seek to destroy him, they challenge his moral compass, forcing him to confront the darker sides of his own character. Through these trials, Spider Man's greatest strength emerges, his ability to always do what's right, even when the cost is high. Perhaps the most iconic of Spider Man's foes is Norman Osborn, known to the world as the Green Goblin. Osborn's story is one of power, obsession, and destruction. Unlike many of Spider Man's villains, Osborn is not driven by a simple desire for wealth or control. His motivations run deeper, rooted in his own twisted sense of superiority and his need to dominate the world around him. Osborn represents the dark side of ambition, the dangerous desire to control not just one's own destiny, but the destinies of others. For Peter, Osborn is not just an enemy, He is a mirror to his own potential for darkness. What would Peter become if he were to abandon his sense of responsibility? What would happen if he let his own desires for power and control take precedence over his duty to protect others? These are the questions that Osborn forces Peter to confront every time they meet. The Green Goblin's impact on Spider Man goes beyond their physical confrontations. He is responsible for some of the most painful and formative events in Peter's life, including the death of Gwen Stacy, a loss that would haunt Peter for years. Through Osborn, Peter learns the true cost of his dual identity as Spider Man. The Goblin is a constant reminder of how fragile life is, and how even the most innocent of moments can be shattered by the pursuit of power and revenge. But while Osborn's ambition and malice make him one of Spider Man's most formidable foes, he is not the only villain who challenges Peter's sense of self. Another major figure in the Spider-Verse is Dr. Octopus, whose intellect and determination make him a force to be reckoned with. Dr. Octavius, like us Peter, is a brilliant scientist, but where Peter uses his intellect for good, Octavius has embraced his own selfish desires. What makes Dr. Octopus particularly dangerous is his ability to manipulate and twist the world around him, using his intellect to manipulate not just machines, but people. His arrogance often blinds him to the humanity of those he encounters, seeing them as mere pawns in his quest for power and control. For Peter, Dr. Octopus is a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition. While Peter was once driven by a desire to protect those he loved, Dr. Octopus represents the possibility of losing oneself in the pursuit of power and control over others. His constant challenge forces Peter to confront his own motivations, testing whether he truly acts for the greater good or whether deep down he is motivated by selfish desires. Then there is Venom, one of the most complex and tragic of Spider-Man's villains. Eddie Brock, the man behind Venom, was once a journalist whose life was destroyed by Peter Parker's alter ego. Their rivalry was not born from a desire for personal gain, but from a deep sense of betrayal and injustice. Eddie Brock believed he had been wronged, and in the symbiotic bond with the alien symbiote, he found a powerful way to seek revenge on Peter. Venom represents the darker side of Peter's own nature, a force that is just as powerful as the one that drives him to be Spider-Man, but one that lacks the guiding moral compass that Peter clings to. The struggle between Spider-Man and Venom is not just one of physicality, but of philosophy. Where Spider-Man seeks to use his power to protect, Venom seeks to use his to destroy. But what makes Venom particularly compelling is that he is not entirely wrong. His pain, his sense of betrayal, and his need for justice are relatable to Peter. In many ways, Venom represents the part of Peter that desires retribution, his desire to lash out at those who hurt him. But unlike Venom, Peter understands that true heroism lies not in revenge, but in forgiveness, sacrifice, and the choice to rise above the darkness. And then there are the many other villains that populate Spider-Man's world: Sandman, the Vulture, the Lizard, Mysterio, Kraven the Hunter, all of whom are more than mere antagonists. Each of these villains is a reflection of some aspect of Peter's own struggles, whether it's the desire for redemption, the pursuit of control, or the fear of becoming something monstrous. These villains, while often dangerous and violent, are also human in their flaws and their desires. They are not simply evil for the sake of evil. They are driven by personal pain, loss, and the same human frailties that Peter himself struggles with. For Spider Man, the greatest challenge is not just defeating these villains, but understanding them. He is forced to confront the darker aspects of human nature, both in the world around him and within himself. His villains are not just obstacles to be overcome, but mirrors that reflect the potential for darkness in all of us. And in facing them, Peter learns the true meaning of heroism. It is not just about defeating evil, it is about understanding it, learning from it, and finding the strength to rise above it. The relationship between Spider Man and his villains is complex and multifaceted. Each encounter is a battle for survival, but also a lesson in empathy, morality, and the cost of heroism. These villains may test Spider Man's strength and resolve, but they also shape him into the hero he is destined to become. Through each confrontation, Peter learns more about the world he is sworn to protect and the man he strives to be. In the end, his greatest strength is not his powers, but his ability to rise above the darkness that his enemies represent, and to choose hope, compassion, and responsibility, no matter the cost. In the vast expanse of the Spider-Verse, amidst the countless universes and infinite versions of Spider-Man, there lies a singular truth. Peter Parker is not just a hero. He is the cornerstone of everything the Spider-Verse stands for, the original thread that binds all the other Spider people together. His legacy is not only woven into the fabric of the multiverse, but it is also a timeless symbol of responsibility, sacrifice, and the human spirit's unyielding desire to fight for what's right, no matter the odds. The story of Peter Parker is a familiar one that has echoed through the generations of Spider Man fans since his creation in 1962. It began with a bite from a radioactive spider, a moment that set into motion a series of events that would not only transform the life of a shy teenager, but also reshape the entire landscape of comic book heroes. But while the origins of Peter Parker may be well known, it is the enduring impact of his choices, the legacy of his actions, that truly defines him. The responsibilities he chose to bear and the sacrifices he made would come to define not just his own fate, but the fate of countless versions of Spider Man across the multiverse. At the heart of Peter's legacy is the mantra that has become synonymous with the Spider Man mythos. With great power comes great responsibility. These words, spoken by his Uncle Ben, shaped Peter's understanding of what it meant to be a hero. They are not just a lesson Peter learned, but a guiding principle that has been passed down through every iteration of Spider Man that followed. From Miles Morales to Gwen Stacy, from Spider Man 2009 to Spider Ham, each of them carries with them the weight of Peter's sacrifice and the burden of his wisdom. Peter's choices, his triumphs, and his mistakes have created a ripple effect that spans the multiverse, shaping every version of Spider Man in their own unique way. What makes Peter's legacy so powerful is that it is rooted in his humanity. Unlike many other superheroes, Peter Parker did not choose to be Spider Man out of a sense of duty or destiny. He did not inherit his powers from a family legacy or a cosmic force. His journey as Spider Man began with a simple, tragic mistake: his failure to stop a criminal, which led to the death of his Uncle Ben. That failure, that guilt, became the driving force behind Peter's commitment to always do what's right. But Peter was not just a symbol of moral perfection. He was a flawed, vulnerable young man who, like all of us, struggled with self doubt, fear, and the weight of his responsibilities. His humanity was his greatest strength, and it is what made him relatable to every person who has ever read his story. As Peter's journey unfolded, he faced countless challenges, both as Spider Man and as Peter Parker. He fought villains who were as much a reflection of his own fears and insecurities as they were dangerous adversaries. He faced the tragic loss of loved ones, from the death of Uncle Ben to the heartbreak of losing Gwen Stacy. He endured personal struggles that tested his resolve and threatened to break him. But through it all, Peter never gave up. He never stopped fighting for what was right, even when it seemed like the entire world was against him. And it is this indomitable spirit, this refusal to give in to despair, that has become the true legacy of Peter Parker. But Peter's legacy is not confined to his own universe. It is a legacy that transcends the boundaries of time and space, one that has influenced every Spider-Man who has come after him. From the moment Miles Morales became Spider-Man, the torch was passed. Miles, though an entirely different person, was shaped by the same values that Peter held dear. Miles carried with him the weight of Peter's legacy, but also the wisdom to forge his own path. He understood that being Spider-Man was not just about fighting villains. It was about protecting the innocent, making the hard choices, and sacrificing everything for the greater good. In the same way, Gwen Stacy, the Spider-Woman of Earth 665, carries Peter's legacy in her own way. Though she faced different challenges and different enemies, her journey as Spider-Man was no less profound. She learned from Peter's mistakes and triumphs, and in doing so, she found her own strength. Gwen's legacy is defined by the same principles that Peter lived by: responsibility, sacrifice, and the willingness to stand up when the world needs you most. But Peter's legacy extends beyond just the spider people who followed in his footsteps. It is a legacy that has influenced everyone who has ever encountered him, both as a hero and as a man. The people of New York, for instance, have come to view Spider-Man as more than just a symbol of hope. He is a symbol of the enduring power of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always the possibility for redemption and change. Peter's story has inspired countless others to be better, to do more, and to never give up, no matter how hard life becomes. As the multiverse expanded and new versions of Spider-Man emerged, Peter's influence grew. In every dimension, there was a version of Peter Parker who left behind his mark, whether through the wisdom he shared with other spider people or through the lessons they learned from his mistakes. It was clear that Peter was not just the hero of Earth 616, but the hero of the Spider-Verse. His legacy was woven into the very fabric of every reality, and his impact could be felt across countless worlds. Yet even as Peter's legacy spread throughout the multiverse, the man himself remained grounded in the same values that had guided him from the beginning. He was not defined by his powers, but by his heart. It was his ability to rise above adversity, to protect those he loved, and to always choose what was right that made him a true hero. In a world filled with gods, monsters, and aliens, Peter Parker stood out as one of the most human heroes of all. Peter's legacy is also a reminder that heroism is not about perfection. It is not about being invincible or infallible. It is about the choices we make, the actions we take, and the way we choose to fight for what is good and just, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Peter was not perfect, but his imperfections made him stronger. His journey was defined not by his victories, but by how he responded to his failures and how he never gave up. As the Spider Verse continues to unfold and new generations of heroes rise, Peter Parker's legacy will continue to inspire those who wear the mask. His story will never be forgotten, for it is a story of hope, of sacrifice, and of the unyielding belief that no matter the cost, the world can always be made better. And as long as there is a Spider Man swinging through the streets, Peter Parker's legacy will live on. The Spider Verse is vast, stretching across countless realities, each one a world unto itself, shaped by the whims of fate and the decisions of those who inhabit it. Every version of Spider Man, from the humble beginnings of Peter Parker to the more modern day iterations like Miles Morales, represents a different facet of the same heroic spirit. And yet, while the core principles of responsibility and sacrifice unite these spider people, each reality they inhabit tells a unique story, one filled with its own challenges, its own triumphs, and its own trials. The beauty of the Spider-Verse lies in its diversity. There is no one way to be Spider-Man. Every reality reflects different cultural, social, and historical backgrounds, all of which influence the journey of the spider person who resides there. These differences are not just superficial, they shape the very nature of what it means to wear the mask and carry the burden of responsibility. In some realities, the stakes are personal, while in others, they are cosmic, affecting the very fabric of existence itself. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Spider-Verse is the fact that while the core essence of Spider-Man remains the same across dimensions, the circumstances and challenges that each version of Spider-Man faces are unique. Take, for example, Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara. In a future where technology has reached unimaginable heights and society has become a stark dystopia, Miguel's journey as Spider-Man is marked not only by the battles he faces with futuristic foes, but by his role as a symbol of resistance in a world that has become increasingly controlled by powerful corporations. His struggle is not just one of survival, it is a fight against the dehumanization of society and the corruption that has infiltrated every corner of the world. On the other hand, there is Pavitr Prabhakar, Spider-Man India. Hailing from a world steeped in ancient tradition, Pavitr's story is marked by the blending of modernity and spirituality. His heroism is influenced by the rich tapestry of Indian culture, with its deep ties to religion, philosophy, and mythology. In Pavitr's world, Spider-Man's journey is not just about fighting criminals, it is a quest for balance, understanding, and alignment with the cosmic forces that shape his existence. His villainous adversaries often draw from the rich Indian mythology, making his battles not only physical but deeply symbolic, rooted in the ancient struggles between good and evil. Even within the more familiar version of Peter Parker, the nuances of his journey change depending on the reality he inhabits. In Earth 616, Peter's journey has been marked by personal tragedy, loss, and the constant balancing act between his life as a hero and his role as a man. He has faced not just physical battles, but emotional ones, each challenge forcing him to confront his deepest fears and desires. His enemies are often reflections of his own internal struggles. Villains like Norman Osborn, who embody the darker parts of Peter's psyche and the temptation to abandon his moral compass in pursuit of power. Meanwhile, in Earth 65, Gwen Stacy's version of Spider Woman brings a different perspective. In her reality, Gwen is not simply the supporting character to Peter's heroism, but the hero herself. Her journey is shaped by her role as a young woman navigating a world of expectations and limitations, fighting not only against criminals, but the societal norms that seek to hold her back. Gwen's struggle is one of empowerment, not just as a superhero, but as a woman who must carve her own path in a world that often doesn't believe in her. In each of these realities, the essence of Spider Man remains the same: an ordinary person granted extraordinary powers who must choose to use those powers for good. But the ways in which each Spider Man navigates their reality are deeply influenced by their own unique circumstances. Their villains, challenges, and even their friends all contribute to the shaping of their heroism. In the Spider Verse, heroism is not one size fits all. It is a deeply personal journey that is reflected in the world around each spider person. Yet, despite these differences, there is something universal that ties all these versions of Spider Man together: the web of life. In every reality, Spider Man is connected to something larger than himself, a force that binds him to the other spider people and to the multiverse as a whole. This web is not just a symbol of power, it is a representation of the responsibility that each Spider Man carries. It is the recognition that no matter what reality they come from, their actions ripple across the multiverse, affecting the lives of others in ways they may never fully understand. And as the Spider Verse continues to expand, the stakes grow ever higher. What was once a simple battle between a hero and his foes has now become a struggle for the survival of the multiverse itself. The web of life is under threat, and all of the spider people must come together to protect it. The differences that once separated them must now be set aside as they unite against a common enemy, one that seeks to tear apart the very fabric of the multiverse and unravel the threads that connect them all. As the Spider-Verse expands, new versions of Spider-Man emerge, each with their own story to tell, their own challenges to face. Some come from worlds where they are the only hero, others from worlds where they are just one of many. Some may fight to save their homes, while others may fight to protect the very existence of the Spider-Verse itself. But in every reality, the heart of Spider-Man remains the same. They are not defined by their powers or the challenges they face, but by their choices, their willingness to rise above the darkness, and their commitment to always do what's right. The Spider-Verse is not just a collection of alternate realities. It is a celebration of the diversity of heroism. Each Spider-Man, no matter where they come from, embodies the same core values: responsibility, sacrifice, and the enduring belief that one person can make a difference. Their differences make them stronger, their individual struggles giving them a unique perspective on what it means to be a hero. And together, they form a web of strength that can withstand even the most formidable threats, showing that no matter how different their worlds may be, the Spider-Verse is united by the same spirit. In the end, the story of Spider-Man across the different realities is one of hope. Hope that no matter where or when you are, no matter the challenges you face, There is always the potential to rise above, to fight for what is right, and to make the world a better place. In the vast expanse of the Spider-Verse, where countless realities intertwine, there is one constant that remains across all dimensions: the power of love. The relationships that form between the spider people and those around them shape their journeys, grounding them in a world that can often feel chaotic, dangerous, and overwhelming. These connections, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, offer strength, provide support, and at times even challenge the very essence of what it means to be a hero. Love is a force that transcends universes, shaping the lives of Spider Man and his counterparts in profound ways. For Peter Parker, love has always been a complex and defining part of his journey. His relationships with Mary Jane Watson, Gwen Stacy, and Aunt May have been at the heart of his story since the very beginning. The love he shares with Mary Jane is one of the most enduring elements of Peter's life. It is a love that has been tested by time, tragedy, and the ever present dangers that come with being Spider Man. Mary Jane understands Peter's dual identity better than anyone, and their bond has become a symbol of strength and resilience. She is both his anchor and his reminder of the human connections that exist beyond the mask. In other dimensions, the theme of love plays out in different ways. In Earth 65, for instance, Gwen Stacy's relationship with Peter Parker takes on a tragic and unique form. In her world, Peter's transformation into the lizard leads to his death, leaving Gwen to carry the weight of the loss. But Gwen's own romantic journey is no less important. Her interactions with the other spider people, particularly her bond with Miles Morales, help to shape her as a hero. Their connection is built on trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect, reminding Gwen that love can take many forms, and that even the greatest of losses can give birth to new connections and possibilities. In Earth 1610, the relationship between Miles Morales and his family is equally powerful. Miles's love for his parents, his struggle to balance his responsibilities as Spider-Man and as a son, and the complicated emotions he feels toward his uncle Aaron all play a significant role in his development. Miles's deep sense of loyalty to his family is tested as he takes on the mantle of Spider-Man, but it is this very love that drives him to protect those he holds dear. His journey is one of understanding that the love he has for his family and the sacrifices they make are just as integral to his role as Spider-Man as his powers and abilities. Then there is the relationship between Peter B. Parker and his own struggles with love. The older, world-weary version of Peter from Earth 616 has experienced more than his share of heartache. His romantic relationship with Mary Jane Watson has gone through numerous ups and downs, shaped by both the pressures of being Spider-Man and the personal struggles of growing older. By the time we meet Peter B. Parker in the Spider-Verse, he has been through both joy and sorrow, and the scars of past relationships are visible in his demeanor. Despite the pain, his relationship with Mary Jane is a symbol of growth and healing. Peter's journey is not only about fighting villains, but about learning how to rebuild relationships that have frayed with time and circumstance. The theme of love and loss also plays a crucial role in the life of Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara. Living in a future where corruption and corporate greed have taken hold of society, Miguel's personal relationships are fraught with tension. He is constantly torn between his duties as a hero and the desire to connect with the people he loves. His complicated relationship with his past and with the woman he loved in his original timeline defines his path as Spider Man 2099. Miguel's story serves as a reminder that love is not always easy, and that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the connections we make with others are what keep us grounded, even in the most distant of futures. For Spider Woman, Jessica Drew, love and relationships have also been central to her narrative. Her complex history, marked by betrayal, sacrifice, and unexpected alliances, has forced her to reevaluate her relationships over and over. Her connection with the other spider people, especially her deep bond with the Spider Verse as a whole, illustrates how love extends beyond romantic or familial ties. For Jessica, her love for the Spider Verse and her desire to protect those she calls family is one of her strongest motivators. It's the belief that love can transcend worlds and that there is always hope for healing that drives her forward. Beyond the romantic relationships that define the spider people's journeys, there is also the theme of found family. The bonds that form between the Spider Verse heroes, even those from alternate realities, are a testament to the idea that love isn't limited to those you're related to by blood. For all the spider people, their shared experiences, struggles, and victories create a network of support and camaraderie that transcends dimensions. They are, in a sense, a family built on shared purpose, an unspoken understanding that no matter where they come from, they are united by the same web that binds them all together. The relationship between Peter Parker and Miles Morales is particularly emblematic of this. When they first meet in the Spider-Verse, there is an instant connection, an understanding that goes beyond words. Peter sees in Miles a reflection of his younger self, but he also recognizes the unique hero that Miles is destined to become. The love they share is not the romantic love one might expect, but a deep platonic bond that is born out of mutual respect and shared responsibility. Peter becomes a mentor, a guide, helping Miles navigate the complexities of being a Spider-Man. And in turn, Miles shows Peter that there is always room for growth, that the heart of a hero can continue to evolve no matter how many battles are fought. These relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, remind us that the true heart of the Spider-Verse lies not in the powers that the spider people wield, but in the connections they share with those around them. It is through love that they find the strength to rise above adversity, to continue fighting for what is right, and to make sacrifices for the greater good. In the Spider-Verse, love is not a weakness. It is the very foundation that holds everything together. As the Spider-Verse continues to expand, and as new heroes emerge from the shadows, the importance of love will remain at the core of their journeys. It is love that motivates them to fight, love that gives them purpose, and love that ultimately saves the multiverse from the greatest threats it faces. And no matter how many different realities, no matter how many versions of Spider-Man arise, the web of love will always be the strongest thread that binds them all. The Spider-Verse is not just a collection of individual heroes, each fighting their own battles in their respective worlds. It is a vast network of interconnected stories where allies from different realities come together to face the threats that no single spider person could confront alone. As the Spider-Verse continues to expand, the importance of teamwork and collaboration becomes ever clearer. In each universe, Spider Man does not fight alone. He is often joined by others, both from his world and from across the multiverse, each with their own unique abilities, strengths, and stories. These team ups are more than just strategic alliances, they are a testament to the enduring power of unity, of heroes working together toward a common goal. At the heart of these collaborations is the recognition that while each Spider Man is unique, they are all part of something larger, a shared destiny, a web of life that connects them all. Whether it is through battle or simple camaraderie, these spider people learn from each other, grow together, and in many ways become family. The alliances that form across the multiverse are often born out of necessity, as the Spider Verse is under constant threat from enemies who seek to destroy it. But these alliances evolve into something much deeper, as the Spider People realize that together they are stronger than the sum of their parts. Perhaps the most iconic team up in the Spider Verse is the one between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. When Miles first emerges as Spider Man, his journey is filled with uncertainty and self doubt. He is still learning to wield his powers, and the weight of responsibility feels overwhelming. It is Peter Parker, the original Spider Man, who helps guide him, teaching him the ropes and showing him that being Spider Man is about more than just fighting villains. It is about the choices one makes and the sacrifices one is willing to endure. The bond between Peter and Miles is more than just that of mentor and protege. It is one of mutual respect and understanding. Peter sees in Miles the potential to carry on the mantle of Spider Man, and Miles sees in Peter a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most difficult battles are worth fighting. Their partnership is as a defining moment in the Spider-Verse, not just because of the strength they share as Spider-Men, but because of the emotional connection between them. Miles represents the future of Spider-Man, the next generation of heroes, and Peter's role as his mentor is not just about teaching him how to fight. It is about imparting the wisdom and values that define what it means to be a hero. Together, they face threats that neither of them could overcome alone, proving that the Spider-Verse is at its strongest when its heroes come together. Their teamwork shows that, despite their differences, the Spider People are united by a common purpose to protect the multiverse and to ensure that hope and justice endure, no matter the cost. Another key alliance in the Spider-Verse is the bond between Spider-Woman, Gwen Stacy, and the other Spider People. Gwen's journey is marked by tragedy, but it is also a story of resilience and growth. Like Peter, she has lost loved ones, and like Miles, she struggles with the weight of being Spider-Woman. But through it all, Gwen finds strength in the support of her fellow Spider People. Whether it is working alongside Peter B. Parker, Spider-Man 2099, or even the more unconventional members of the Spider-Verse, Gwen proves that the bonds between them are not just forged in battle, but in shared understanding. Her connection with the Spider People of different realities helps her realize that she is not alone, that there is always someone out there who shares her struggles, her triumphs, and her sacrifices. For Gwen, these alliances are not just about fighting alongside other heroes, they are about finding a sense of belonging. The Spider-Verse can be a lonely place, with countless versions of Spider-Mans scattered across the multiverse, each facing their own battles. But through her relationships, With the other spider people, Gwen learns that she is part of something much larger than herself. These alliances remind her that even in the darkest moments, there is strength in unity, and that love and friendship are the greatest weapons a hero can wield. In addition to the personal connections that form between the spider people, there are also moments where entire teams of spider people come together to fight for the future of the multiverse. The Spider-Verse event itself is a prime example of this collective effort. As the multiverse faces the threat of annihilation from forces like the Inheritors, the Spider People must set aside their differences and work together to protect their worlds. The scale of this battle is unlike anything the Spider-Verse has ever seen, and the stakes could not be higher. The Spider People are not just fighting for their own universes, they are fighting for the survival of the very web of life that connects them all. In these moments, the Spider People learn that their strength lies not in their individual powers, but in their collective will to fight for what is right. The bonds they share as Spider People transcend the boundaries of their individual realities. They are united by a common purpose, and it is this unity that gives them the power to face even the most formidable threats. They are no longer just heroes from different worlds. They are a team, a family, bound together by the shared responsibility of protecting the multiverse. The alliances that form across the Spider-Verse are not always easy. There are moments of tension, moments where the differences between the spider people seem insurmountable. But these challenges are part of what makes their relationships so powerful. They are not just united by their powers, they are united by their shared experiences, by the sacrifices they have all made in the name of justice. These alliances are built on trust, respect, and the understanding that no matter the cost, they must stand together. The Spider-Verse is a place where teamwork is essential. The Spider People may come from different worlds, but they share a common bond that transcends the boundaries of their realities. Whether it is Peter and Miles, Gwen and her allies, or the entire Spider-Verse standing united against the forces of darkness, these team-ups remind us that together we are stronger. The Spider-Verse is not just a collection of individuals, it is a family bound together by the threads of responsibility, love, and the unyielding belief that no matter what, there is always hope for the future. The Spider-Verse is a vast, intricate web of interconnected realities, each one a reflection of the choices, triumphs, and struggles of its inhabitants. However, like any great tapestry, there is always a shadow that lurks beneath the surface, forces that seek to unravel the very fabric of existence. The multiverse is not only populated by heroes and their allies, but by darker forces, those who have been corrupted by the very power that gives the spider people their strength. These forces, often born from the same essence that makes Spider-Man who he is, serve as stark reminders that even the most noble of intentions can be twisted, and even the greatest of heroes can fall into temptation. At the heart of this darkness lies the concept of corruption. In a world where power is so intimately tied to responsibility, there is always the risk that the line between hero and villain will become blurred. For the Spider People, the greatest challenge is not only fighting the villains who threaten their worlds, but resisting the temptation to give in to the darker impulses that come with their extraordinary abilities. The very powers that make Spider-Man a symbol of hope can also become a corrupting force, leading even the most well intentioned individuals astray. One of the most striking examples of this corruption within the Spider Verse is found in the story of the evil Peter Parker from Earth 616. Known as the Spider Man of the Dark Dimension, this version of Peter Parker was unable to resist the allure of absolute power. Initially, he began his journey with the same noble ideals as his counterpart, using his abilities to protect the innocent and fight for justice. But over time, the weight of his responsibility began to wear on him. The sacrifices he made, the losses he endured, and the constant battle between his identity as Peter Parker and Spider Man took its toll. The temptation to wield his powers for personal gain became too strong to resist, and Peter Parker, in this reality, abandoned his moral compass. His desire for control, to end the endless cycle of crime and pain, led him down a path where the ends justified the means. He became a dictator in his own right, using his strength to impose order on a world that he believed was beyond saving. His transformation into the Spider Man of the Dark Dimension is a tragic reflection of what happens when a hero becomes consumed by the very power that once defined them. The fall of this version of Peter Parker is a painful one, as it represents the internal battle faced by every spider person, the struggle between maintaining one's humanity and yielding to the darker side of their powers. It serves as a cautionary tale, reminding the Spider-Verse that even the most noble of heroes can fall into the same traps that they fight against. And yet, even in the darkest moments, there is a flicker of hope. The Spider-Verse is a place where redemption is always possible, where even those who have fallen can rise again, if only they can find the strength to do so. The story of Peter Parker's fall is not unique in the Spider-Verse. Across the multiverse, there are countless other versions of Spider-Man who have faced their own temptations. One of the most tragic of these is the story of the Superior Spider-Man, a version of Peter Parker whose body was taken over by the villainous Dr. Octopus. In a desperate bid to continue Peter's fight for justice, Dr. Octopus sought to prove that he could be a better Spider-Man than Peter ever was. The result was a twisted version of Spider-Man, one who was willing to take lives, manipulate others, and sacrifice his own morality in the name of achieving what he saw as a greater good. The Superior Spider-Man represents the dark side of the Spider-Verse in a very real way. He is a Spider-Man who has abandoned the very principles that made him a hero in the first place. His arrogance, his willingness to push the boundaries of what is acceptable, and his refusal to acknowledge his own flaws led him down a path where he became everything he once fought against. And yet, even in this corrupted form, the essence of Peter Parker remained. The struggle for redemption is at the core of this version of Spider-Man's journey, and it serves as a poignant reminder that corruption is never an irreversible fate. No matter how far one falls, there is always a chance for redemption, a path back to the light. But it is not only the heroes who are at risk of corruption in the Spider-Verse. There are also those who start out as allies but become seduced by power and the temptation to control their own fate. One of the most compelling characters to experience this downfall is the character of the Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly. Ben, originally a clone of Peter Parker, faced his own internal struggles throughout his journey. Initially, he sought to prove himself worthy of being Spider-Man, to step out from Peter's shadow and establish his own identity. However, over time, Ben's desire for independence and recognition led him down a darker path. His struggle with his own identity, the pressure to be more than just a copy, made him vulnerable to manipulation and ultimately corrupted his sense of what it meant to be a hero. Ben's journey is a reminder that the temptation to define oneself outside of the legacy of others can be a dangerous pursuit. He eventually became entangled in a web of personal conflict and guilt, questioning whether his actions as Spider Man were truly his own or simply a response to the pressures of his origins. Ben's corruption is not one of malice, but of confusion, a reflection of the internal battle every spider person faces as they try to define their own identity and legacy. Like Peter, Ben learns that the path to heroism is not about escaping one's past, but accepting it and using it to build a better future. As the Spider-Verse expands and new versions of Spider-Man emerge, the theme of corruption remains an ever-present shadow. Every hero, whether they are driven by the desire to protect others or the need to prove themselves, faces the risk of being consumed by their powers. It is this constant struggle between the hero one aspires to be and the darker forces within that makes the Spider-Verse so compelling. The Spider People are not invincible, they are not perfect, and it is in their imperfections, in their struggles, that their true heroism shines. The Spider-Verse is a place where darkness exists alongside light, where every victory is hard-earned and every mistake has the potential to lead to redemption. It is a universe defined not just by its villains, but by its heroes' ability to rise above their temptations, to learn from their failures, and to continue the fight for justice, even when the odds seem insurmountable. In the Spider-Verse, the greatest lesson is that no matter how many times a hero falls, they can always rise again. They can always find their way back to the light. The Spider-Verse, with its infinite iterations and countless dimensions, is a vast and evolving tapestry. Every reality, every version of Spider-Man adds its own unique thread to the web of existence. But as the multiverse continues to expand, there is a constant question that hangs in the air. What does the future hold for Spider-Man and the countless heroes who share his mantle? The legacy of Peter Parker and the Spider People is rich with history, but it is also a story of continual rebirth, a reminder that heroism is never static, but always in motion, always growing. The future of the Spider-Verse is one of transformation. As new versions of Spider-Man emerge, as new threats rise and fall, the legacy of Peter Parker will continue to echo through the multiverse, shaping the next generation of heroes. The web that connects all Spider People is not a static entity. It is dynamic, ever-changing, and ever-expanding. As more heroes join the ranks, each with their own stories, struggles, and triumphs, the meaning of what it means to be Spider-Man will continue to evolve. The future of the Spider-Verse is not just about preserving the legacy of Peter Parker. It is about ensuring that the values and ideals he fought for continue to thrive, passed down from one generation of Spider People to the next. As the multiverse grows, the Spider-Verse will face new challenges, and it will be up to the next wave of heroes to step up and protect the delicate balance that holds their worlds together. One of the most exciting aspects of the future of the Spider-Verse is the rise of new Spider People, many of whom bring unique perspectives and powers to the table. Miles Morales, the Spider Man of Earth 1610, has already proven to be one of the most significant successors to Peter Parker, embodying the same ideals of responsibility and sacrifice, but with his own personal twist. Miles's story is one of growth, as he learns to balance the weight of his powers with the everyday challenges of being a teenager, a son, and a hero. His future is one of endless potential as he continues to carve out his own path in the multiverse. Other versions of Spider Man are equally poised to carry the mantle forward. From Spider Woman, Gwen Stacy, who continues to fight for justice in her world, to Spider Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, whose future is defined by both technological advancements and personal loss. Each version of Spider Man represents a different facet of what it means to be a hero. The future of the Spider Verse will see these diverse iterations grow, learn, and evolve as they face the challenges that come with being Spider Man in a constantly shifting world. But with the future of the Spider Verse comes the ever present question of legacy. What does it mean to inherit the mantle of Spider Man, to take on the responsibility of protecting countless worlds? Each new hero must grapple with this question, finding their own path while still honoring the legacy of those who came before them. The weight of Peter Parker's legacy is immense, but it is also a source of strength. For each new Spider Man, it is a reminder that they are part of something larger, something timeless, a web that connects all who fight for what is good and just. The challenges that these new heroes will face are not just physical, they are existential. The very nature of the Spider-Verse means that there will always be new threats, new dangers, and new villains to confront. But there will also be new alliances, new friendships, and new opportunities to grow. The future of the Spider-Verse is one of constant renewal, a cycle of rebirth where the next generation of spider people will face challenges and triumphs that are uniquely their own. In doing so, they will honor the legacy of Peter Parker while forging their own identities as heroes. One of the greatest legacies of Peter Parker is the sense of responsibility he instilled in all the spider people who followed in his footsteps. The phrase, "with great power comes great responsibility," is not just a slogan, it is the core of what it means to be Spider Man. It is the unyielding belief that no matter the cost, one must always choose to fight for what is right. This principle is what ties the Spider-Verse together, and it is what will continue to define the future of the multiverse. As the next generation of spider people rises, they will carry this mantle forward, continuing to fight for justice, even when the odds seem insurmountable. The future of the Spider-Verse is also one of exploration and discovery. As the multiverse expands, new versions of Spider-Man will emerge from realities previously unknown. These new spider people will bring their own stories, their own struggles, and their own perspectives to the larger narrative. Some will come from worlds where they are the only hero, while others will be part of larger teams of heroes. Some will face familiar villains, while others will encounter entirely new threats. But no matter where they come from, they will all share one thing in common: the belief that they can make a difference, that they can protect the people they love, and that they can stand up for what is right, no matter the cost. As the Spider-Verse continues to evolve, it will not only be shaped by the actions of the heroes who inhabit it, but also by the villains who challenge them. The future will undoubtedly bring new threats, new forces that seek to disrupt the delicate balance of the multiverse. But with every new villain, there will be a new hero ready to rise up and face them. The battle between good and evil will continue, and the spider people will continue to fight for the future of the multiverse, ensuring that hope never fades, no matter how dark the world may seem. The legacy of Peter Parker will continue to shape the Spider-Verse for generations to come. His sacrifices, his triumphs, and his unwavering commitment to justice will always be at the heart of the Spider-Verse, serving as a guiding light for all who follow in his footsteps. But the future of the Spider-Verse is not just about preserving the past. It is about building something new. It is about the next generation of spider people who will rise to the challenges of their worlds and continue the fight for a better tomorrow. In doing so, they will honor the legacy of Peter Parker while creating a legacy all their own, one that will inspire future generations of heroes. In the ever expanding Spider-Verse, where realities shift and timelines bend, there exists a concept more powerful than even the web that holds the multiverse together. Time. Time, like the web of life itself, stretches across dimensions, and every version of Spider-Man's journey is affected by it in unique ways. The power of the spider people is not just in their agility or strength, but in the lessons they learn as they navigate the passage of time and in how they shape the future of their worlds. Time in the Spider-Verse is not linear. It loops and folds, creating possibilities and alternate realities. Some spider people may travel through time, experiencing the past and the future, while others are bound by the moments that define them. Yet, despite the fluctuations in time, there are certain lessons that remain timeless, universal truths that shape the hearts of all who wear the mask of Spider-Man. For Peter Parker, the passage of time has been both a blessing and a curse. From the moment he was bitten by a radioactive spider, Peter's life was never the same. He has faced loss, sacrifice, love, and the weight of responsibility. But what makes Peter's journey so relatable and so universally impactful is his constant struggle with the passage of time. As Peter grows older, as he experiences more of the world around him, the questions of what it means to be Spider-Man evolve. He realizes that his time as a hero is limited, that he cannot protect everyone forever. And yet, despite the inevitable passage of time, he continues to fight because he understands that the impact of his choices, no matter how small, will ripple throughout time and space. This realization is not unique to Peter Parker. It is something that every spider person must come to terms with. The knowledge that their time in the role of hero is finite, that the world they protect is constantly changing, forces them to reevaluate their sense of purpose and legacy. In a world where the multiverse is ever expanding, each version of Spider-Man faces the challenge of using their time wisely, knowing that the choices they make will affect not just their own realities, but the entire fabric of existence. Take, for example, the Spider-Man of Earth 65, Gwen Stacy. Her journey is shaped by the tragic loss of Peter Parker and the responsibility she feels to carry on his legacy. For Gwen, time is a reminder of what she has lost. Her world is defined by her grief and her desire to honor Peter's memory. But as she continues her path as Spider-Woman, Gwen learns that time is not just something to mourn, but something to embrace. It is in the passage of time that she finds strength, that she finds the clarity to move forward and to build her own future as a hero. She learns that she cannot keep living in the shadow of the past, and that her legacy as Spider Woman is her own to create, not to inherit. Similarly, the Spider Man of the future, Miguel O'Hara, faces his own battle with time. As Spider Man 2099, Miguel lives in a world that is vastly different from Peter's. It is a world shaped by technological advancement, corporate greed, and a society on the brink of collapse. Miguel's story is one of survival, but also of redemption. His role as Spider Man is not just about protecting his world from the threats of the present, it is about shaping the future. Time is both his enemy and his ally, as he must navigate the complexities of a world that is constantly changing, all while trying to build a better future for those who come after him. For Miguel, the lessons of time are profound. He understands that the mistakes of the past cannot be undone, but they can be learned from. His struggles with his own legacy are compounded by the realities of the future, where every decision he makes has the potential to shape the world for generations to come. And so, he must balance the weight of the present with the hope of the future, knowing that the legacy he leaves behind will define the Spider-Verse for years to come. The concept of time and its impact on the Spider-Verse is also explored through the dynamic between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. Miles, the younger hero, is constantly aware of the weight of his mentor's legacy. He looks up to Peter, but he also struggles with the knowledge that someday he will have to carry that mantle on his own. The passage of time, for Miles, is not just about growing up. It is about stepping into a role that is bigger than himself and about learning the lessons that Peter has taught him. As time goes on, Miles's journey as Spider-Man is marked by moments of doubt and fear, but also by growth and transformation. He is forced to confront his own identity as a hero and to reconcile the lessons he has learned with his own sense of responsibility. The relationship between Miles and Peter is a beautiful example of the passing of time, the torch being passed from one generation to the next, with all the love, wisdom, and challenges that come with it. But perhaps one of the most profound aspects of the Spider-Verse and time is the idea of redemption and rebirth. Across the multiverse, many spider people face moments of failure, doubt, and loss. They make mistakes, they fall, and they struggle to find their way. Yet in every timeline, there is always the possibility for rebirth. Time in the Spider-Verse is not a force that limits the heroes. It is a force that offers them the chance to try again, to evolve, and to grow. The story of Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, is one such example. Ben, as a clone of Peter Parker, was marked by doubt and a constant search for his own identity. He struggled with the notion that he was merely a copy, never truly his own person. But as time passed, Ben found his place in the world, using his experiences to shape a new path for himself. His story is a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there is always the potential for change and for growth. Similarly, the story of the various versions of Spider-Man from across the multiverse illustrates the power of rebirth. No matter how far a hero may fall, there is always the possibility of redemption, the power to choose, to rise above temptation, to fight for what is right, and to embrace the future is always within reach. Time is not just a measure of moments past, but a reflection of the choices that define who we are. In the Spider-Verse, time is not merely a ticking clock. It is a canvas on which every spider person paints their legacy. The choices they make, the battles they fight, and the lessons they learn all contribute to a greater tapestry that spans across dimensions. As the Spider Verse continues to grow and evolve, the future will be shaped by the lessons of the past, and the hope of the future will always be tied to the timeless principles that have defined Spider Man since the beginning: responsibility, sacrifice, and the enduring belief that no matter how much time passes, there is always a way forward. At the core of every spider person's journey is the question: what does it truly mean to be a hero? The Spider Verse, with its endless iterations and infinite realities, explores this question through countless versions of Spider Man, each shaped by their own unique experiences, environments, and struggles. But despite the many differences between these heroes, there is one thing that remains constant. The heart of a spider person is defined not by their powers, but by the choices they make and the sacrifices they are willing to endure. For Peter Parker, the original Spider Man, the journey from a shy, powerless teenager to a superhero was not simply a story of gaining strength. It was a story of growth, responsibility, and the understanding that true heroism is not about being invincible, but about standing tall in the face of fear, loss, and failure. The lesson that Peter learns time and again is that the heart of a hero is not measured by the battles won or the villains defeated, but by the willingness to make difficult choices, even when the odds seem impossible. It is this understanding that defines him, and ultimately, what makes Peter Parker one of the most iconic and beloved heroes in the Spider Verse. Peter's journey began with the simple yet profound lesson from his Uncle Ben: with great power comes great responsibility. These words, though often repeated, are not just a reminder of the burden of being Spider Man. They are a call to action, a statement about the very essence of heroism. For Peter, becoming Spider Man was not just about using his abilities to protect the people of New York. It was about understanding the weight of his decisions, knowing that his actions, both good and bad, would have consequences. It is this deep sense of responsibility that guides him in every battle, in every moment of doubt, and in every decision he makes. For Peter, the true test of heroism lies in the personal sacrifices he makes. Unlike many other heroes who have the luxury of anonymity, Peter's life as Spider Man is one of constant conflict. He must balance his responsibilities as a hero with the demands of his personal life, his relationships with his friends, his family, and his love interests. The weight of this dual identity is often overwhelming, and Peter's greatest struggle is not just with the villains he faces, but with the emotional cost of his actions. His relationships, especially with Aunt May and Mary Jane, are at the heart of his journey. Every time Peter chooses to don the mask of Spider Man, he is making a sacrifice. He is sacrificing moments with loved ones, and often the opportunity for happiness and peace. But it is this very sacrifice that makes him the hero he is. He understands that the burden of his powers is not just a personal struggle, it is a gift that must be used for the greater good, even if it means giving up a part of himself. This theme of sacrifice and responsibility is echoed throughout the Spider-Verse, where every version of Spider-Man faces their own personal trials. Miles Morales, The Spider Man of Earth 1610 is a young man who, like Peter, must come to terms with the immense weight of his powers. But unlike Peter, Miles's journey is shaped by the fact that he has been thrust into the role of Spider Man far earlier than he ever expected. Miles must balance the challenges of being a teenager with the crushing responsibility of being a hero. But where Peter's story was one of learning how to embrace his powers, Miles's story is one of understanding that he is not just inheriting the mantle of Spider-Man, he is forging his own path. Miles's greatest challenge, much like Peter's, is learning how to navigate his dual identity. The pressures of being Spider-Man weigh heavily on him, especially as he faces the loss of loved ones and the uncertainty of his role in a world that often feels too big to manage. But through it all, Miles holds onto one simple truth. He is not alone. He has the support of his friends, his family, and ultimately the legacy of Peter Parker to guide him. The heart of Miles's heroism is not in his powers, but in his willingness to continue fighting, even when he feels out of his depth. His journey is about learning that heroism is not defined by perfection, but by persistence and by the ability to keep going even when the world seems to be falling apart. Gwen Stacy, or Spider-Woman from Earth 65, also embodies the same principle of heroism that drives Peter and Miles. In her worlds, Gwen faces the tragic loss of Peter Parker, the version of her best friend and love interest who becomes the Lizard. This loss shapes Gwen's path, but instead of allowing grief and guilt to define her, Gwen channels her pain into action. Her choice to become Spider-Woman is not just a way to honor Peter's memory, it is a way for her to forge her own identity as a hero. Her journey is one of self-discovery, of learning that heroism is not about living up to someone else's legacy, but about creating your own. Gwen's struggles, like those of Peter and Miles, are a reminder that being a hero is not about perfection. It is about having the courage to rise in the face of loss and uncertainty, and to continue fighting for what is right, no matter the cost. The heart of the Spider-Verse, then, is not just about the physical powers these heroes wield. It is about the choices they make, the sacrifices they are willing to make in order to protect the people they love and the worlds they inhabit. The true strength of a hero comes not from their ability to swing from webs or fight supervillains, but from their ability to carry the weight of responsibility and to act with courage and compassion even when the path is difficult. Every spider person, whether they come from Earth 616, Earth 1610, or any other reality, shares this fundamental truth. Being a hero is not about having superpowers, but about using the gifts they have to make the world a better place. And in this, the Spider-Verse is united, not by the powers that each hero possesses, but by the shared responsibility that defines them all. The heart of the Spider-Verse is the web of love, sacrifice, and courage that binds these heroes together, and it is this heart that will continue to drive the Spider-Verse forward for generations to come. The future of the Spider-Verse will continue to explore these themes, how every hero, no matter their reality, must confront the same struggles, the same sacrifices, and the same moral dilemmas. It is this universal truth that makes the Spider-Verse so compelling, so relatable, and so enduring. No matter how many versions of Spider-Man there are, they all embody the same core principles. They are all driven by the same desire to protect the innocent, to rise above their fears, and to make the world a better place. and that is what makes each and every spider person a hero. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the vast and ever expanding Spider Verse. We've woven together the stories of countless spider people from across infinite realities, each one facing their own challenges, learning their own lessons, and carrying the weight of heroism in their hearts. From Peter Parker's timeless journey to the emergence of new heroes like Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, and beyond, we've seen how love, sacrifice, responsibility, and the choices we make define us as heroes. As we reflect on the incredible legacy of Spider Man, it's clear that no matter the world, no matter the time, the heart of a hero beats the same. It's in the small decisions that ripple across dimensions, the courage to rise in the face of adversity, and the unwavering belief that anyone, regardless of where they come from, can make a difference. May the lessons of the Spider-Verse guide you as you face your own challenges, inspire you to rise above the darkness, and remind you that even in a world full of uncertainty, there is always hope. Thank you for drifting through this web of stories with me. May your dreams be full of adventure and heroism, and may your heart always choose what's right. Until next time, good night.